What's up, interwebs? I am David Long. I'm here today to share with you this awesome new project that my buddy Aljoša and I are doing together. It's called Integral Review, and we are going to review movies and maybe TV shows, maybe some other stuff. I don't know, we're going to review things. And with that said, I'm going to pass it to my homie Aljoša.
So welcome David.
Hey bud, welcome yourself.
So today we're gonna talk about an interesting topic, about a very interesting, very known, probably the most known franchise movie ever created. That's Star Wars.
Da 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 da
Da da da da da da da.
da 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 da. Yeah, we're coming from a universe far, far away in a time right here and now, maybe long and far away from when you're listening to this.
Probably.
It's going to be a great talk today. I'm super excited to talk about Star Wars, mythology, and metaphors.
Yeah, I think it's gonna be interesting, and I think Star Wars is like almost a perfect movie for this kind of stuff, because it encompasses all those things that we love about mythology and stuff.
Oh yeah.
So before we start, I just want to say spoiler warning for everybody who hasn't seen the movie, but I assume since this podcast is going to be uploaded quite late that everybody by now has seen the movie. But still, spoiler alert if somebody hasn't seen it. So how are you, David, first of all, before we start?
I'm doing really good. Yeah, I feel great. I'm working on a new series right now called What You Talking About, Wilbur? And I'm really excited to get that going. It's just going to kind of go and talk about like one episode at a time, different problems in the integral world space, and in particular with Ken Wilbur. What have you been working on, man?
Well, I'm gonna actually start doing. You have those three epistemology videos in the American version. Well, I'm starting to maybe try to make a Slovenian version of that and try to make a Slovenian like almost like a movement around this topic.
Excellent.
So I bought some things and we'll see how that goes. I'm gonna get the gear soon, so I'll go out on the streets and start to do a little epistemology and see if that is something that can catch on in my country. I think it can, and it's a good thing for people to start thinking critically. But that's a talk for another time. So let's just start with the movie. So basically, this is a sequel to The Force Awakens that J.J. Abrams produced and directed. So how did you like The Force Awakens, the 7th episode?
It was a good start. It seemed like it could go someplace good. It was definitely doing a lot of the callbacks and stuff to previous Star Wars themes and stuff. But I don't know. It's definitely, in a lot of ways, aesthetically better than the prequels. But the hero's journey is not quite as explicit in the foreground as it is in the original Star Wars trilogy. At least it doesn't seem to me.
Yeah, I feel the same way. I think Force was maybe too in our face. I understand he was trying to make Force like this mystical thing, but the problem is that Rey didn't really have to fight for it. She just got it. And I feel that sort of destroys the hero journey arc, because if you already have it, then what's the point of having the journey? But still, he did some good things, and I feel like Rian Johnson, who's the director of Episode 8, had a lot to work with. But I just felt everything that J.J. set up, being right or wrong, I think he just destroyed. Because the way I see it, Rian basically just looked at all the criticism that Episode 7 had, and just said, okay, fuck everything, I'm just going to make everything exactly the opposite. So it's not going to be anywhere similar to anything. And I felt that's one of the reasons why Star Wars sort of lost the identity. And I'm not sure what's going on right now with this new Star Wars movies. There's a huge polarity between what critics think, what users score. If you look at Metacritic and Rotten Tomatoes, it's around 45 to 50, which is horrible. I think even Force Awakens has 60, 70 or something. So for me personally, I was extremely disappointed on The Last Jedi. I didn't like The Force Awakens, but I still sort of got this Star Wars feeling. But The Last Jedi just destroyed sort of Star Wars for me. How was your subjective experience of The Last Jedi?
Yeah, I mean, I can definitely see where you're coming from. If you listen to what a lot of these online critics are saying, they're basically incredibly frustrated by just what you're talking about, this idea that the main protagonist doesn't have to learn anything. They call her a Mary Sue or whatever, which, as far as I understand, is not a feminist or anything against female, because there's a Gary Stu, so there's a masculine version of it as well. Basically, people are just upset with this idea that you don't have to work to earn anything, and that you can just show up on the first day of school and already be better than your teachers. Not only do they blow up the ancient wisdom of the Jedi and then laugh about it, it's that tells you a lot about the perspective of the people who are making this thing, or the postmodern worldview that it's reflecting. This kind of idea of, we just know better, just because we know. And what do these old, I would want to say dead white men, probably is the generalization, what do they have to tell us about what it is to be a Jedi? And when you are like a Mary Sue type of figure and you don't have to put in any of the actual work, when it's written like that, then what good are these ancient books? You don't, it's not like you have to learn anything. You can just already know. Like, not only is it insulting to some extent, but it's also boring. It dehumanizes the protagonist and makes them into some kind of otherworldly magical being. And even within the script, they don't write her like she's a otherworldly magical being. There's an opportunity for that, it seems, in the plot, but it seems like they kind of cut that road off. But this kind of a general theme of a rejection of any kind of version of healthy masculinity seems to be running throughout. There's no book I need to study. There's no authority figure, and all the authority figures that we see are oppressive tyrants. And even when Poe tries to assert himself to save the day or to make things better, even he is rejected as if he just wants to blow shit up or something like that. It's very interesting. Some of the fan titles on the videos are things like Gender Wars and The Fempire Strikes Back. A lot of people are feeling like the masculine archetypes in this movie are either demonized or castrated, and that's a problem.
Yeah.
But, I heard a really interesting criticism that there's no love story in this Star Wars. And that's kind of interesting to think about, how the lack of a love story, I mean, maybe they're building something between Rey and
Kylo Ren.
Yeah, maybe they're going to build something where they can kind of save each other or something, but I don't know.
And it's really interesting. I mean, what does it say about a character when you call him emo? I mean, you would never say something like that to Darth Vader, you know what I mean? And that already says a lot about how these characters are developed. I mean, at no point should one look at Star Wars movie and say, what's that emo kid? Emo kid and Star Wars should not be in the same sentence. You know what I mean?
Well, I mean, if you look at the prequels, maybe. I don't know.
There were no emo. Anakin Skywalker was just creepy, but he was not emo. That's the difference. He was like sexually perverted, creepy, mom-loving psychopath, but it's different though. That's still not emo. Anakin still has points here. Okay, so what we're gonna do, we're gonna go into mythology and everything, don't worry. We're just gonna go through some basic things about the movie, so some objective stuff like pacing and humor, and then we're gonna touch on each character's story arc. Then we're gonna go to the main plot twists, a few plot holes, and then we're gonna go into mythology and fixing Star Wars and SJW agenda and so on.
Okay.
So first, when it comes to it, the humor. So pacing and humor. So even when I was starting to watch the movie, and a lot of critics on the YouTube already said that, but we're just gonna sort of repeat. Just the idea of this humor that it had didn't feel really like Star Warsy when Poe was in the front of that dreadnought, the Star Destroyer or whatever, and he was like doing your mama joke on the General Hux. It's like, is this really like a Star Wars humor? It just feel like kind of weak and kind of stupid slapstick kind of humor that I felt was kind of out of place. Didn't feel Star Warsy to me. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of what Star Wars is doing since it's become Disney is it's trying to appeal to multiple demographics. Let's make Star Wars cool. Let's make Star Wars hip. Let's make Star Wars diverse. Let's make Star Wars, all the things that all the people out there have criticized it in the past for not being like, so let's try to make everyone happy, basically. And I've heard Lucas basically say this himself, that it becomes less and less about trying to do a good job on conveying a vision and more about trying to make everyone happy and make it good for the kids and good for the teens and good for the people at all ages, but giving them all, here's a little cute cartoon fox, or here's a little cute moment for the kids or whatever.
Yeah. Plinkett actually, when he did the prequels, he was like judging prequels for saying it's all a huge marketing plot. But I feel this was even more marketing than the prequels. I don't think George Lucas intentionally tried to make prequels so it would sell toys. But here it almost feels like this was intentionally made. I don't know. It's hard to say.
I don't know, man. Jar Jar Binks kind of jumps to mind as a potential example of for the kids and trying to sell toys.
Actually, I'm so desperate that I would actually rather see Jar Jar being behind it all like a Sith Lord, which is some theory there was on the internet.
Right.
Than what we had here.
He does like drunken boxing or something like that.
Yeah. And there's like a huge conspiracy theory how Jar Jar was all behind it all and using the Force to manipulate Obi-Wan and Qui-Gon and so on.
Yeah, I think I've read some of that.
Even Robert Chicken made fun of it. It was amazing. Yeah,
that's pretty good stuff. All right. Touché.
So if we look at the good parts of the movie, I think I'll give Rian Johnson at least credit that he had balls for really, doing opposite things. I think like throwing the lightsaber was when Rey gave lightsaber to Luke and he just like threw it down, like fuck you, Ray, fuck the Star Wars. I think it's like almost like a
Yeah.
metaphor of Ryan Johnson saying, look, fuck you fans, I'm doing my shit, and this is like a metaphorical way of doing it. That's sort of how I
Yeah.
felt, yeah.
And to some extent, I think the metaphor around that is also this idea of enlightenment is not what you think it is. Like so many people come to it with all these egoic preconceptions and stuff like that. And maybe if you met a real master, he would be like, no, what are you doing? This is all your ego. Like it's going to be the opposite of what you think to some extent. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
To me, that kind of rings true of that. And there is, like you're saying, this kind of good metaphor to some extent of dethroning your teacher and humanizing the teacher. But you can see to some extent how even some of that is kind of coming from or could be perceived from a feminist putting down the masculine kind of a perspective. Like, yeah, sit down, Dad.
Yeah, I'm not necessarily saying that's a bad arc. A lot of people didn't like Luke Skywalker. I'm not necessarily against Grumpy Luke, but if you want to, I mean, that's how people call him.
Grumpy
But if
Luke.
you want to do that character arc, I mean, even the ideas you're saying right now, like this idea of what do you know, old man, right? I have it all in me. That can be done in a correct way. Even the ideas that were
Yes.
trying to be conveyed were not conveyed in the right way. I didn't get all those messages he was trying to convey because, and we're gonna come to that. Let's go back to the humor.
Okay, my bad.
It's okay. We're gonna get to that. Yeah. So again, this like slapstick kind of visual humor, like Ray cutting that stone and almost killing like those space nuns who were in that Octu Island where Luke Skywalker was going. I mean, and like when Ray saw the Kylo Ren in her Force vision and he was like shirtless, and she was like, "Can you put a towel on?" Like that's like some weird sexual thing. I didn't quite understand what he was pointing at.
Don't ask me, man. I don't know
And
about
and
that.
the famous squishing milk through the dead space cow
Oh,
when
yeah.
I mean, I was
What?
like, are you kidding me? No way.
Well, I hear that's supposed to be like a tie back to this thing where Luke was always drinking blue milk in the first movies or whatever.
Even
And
if
so,
yeah, but you don't spoil it with a space cow. Come on. And
I mean, yeah.
the way
Why
he
film
drank
that?
it, why did he drink it like that? Like almost like angrily. Like, fuck you, Ray, I'm drinking this milk now. I mean, what the fuck was that? And by the way, this milk drinking thing is gonna be thumbnail on my version of the podcast. I already created a thumbnail. Okay, so again, humor was kind of visual slapstick all over the place, and I just didn't feel like it felt it didn't feel how should I say, humor didn't feel, and also pacing. We're gonna come to pacing, but humor didn't feel like it was authentic to the universe. I don't know how to say it. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I know what you mean. Like, that's what I'm saying about the whole, like, modernization of it. It's like trying to make it relevant to our universe, like saying our kind of slang versus, like, trying to make it relevant to itself.
And we're gonna go just through pacing really fast. So the way the movie, this is basically it just continues right after the Force Awakens. It just continues, right? And it just the whole pacing of the movie was just, and this happens, and this happens, and this. No character, and we're gonna analyze every character, but no character really becomes. It's basically all the characters are the same at the end of the movie. There were just some things that happen. So the Empire is chasing us, and then we need to go into this mission to that casino planet, and then that happens, and this happens, and that. But nobody grows. Nothing really happens. So it's the pacing of the movie is just happening. There was no
Yeah.
time for reflection, no time for like, oh, this is like this huge plot twist or whatever. Just happening. The end. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it almost feels like, think about the way that the Force has been used in the past versus the way that Kylo Ren and Rey are somehow connected in those moments. Like the Force in these movies doesn't feel like something that you could tap into and utilize. It feels like God has a plan, kind of a universe, where it's like all destined to happen and all the characters kind of just fall into place. It doesn't feel like they are really choosing or that they have their own kind of ultimate plan or goals. It's all just kind of unfolding and falling into place. It's a very strange feeling, and maybe that's what some of the difference is. I've kind of felt like it wasn't so much like that before in Star Wars.
Yeah, okay, I can understand that, and if that was the case, even that was not portrayed well. So if you want to portray the like force is behind it all, so again, this is like free will versus determinism kind of arc. If you want to make Star Wars
Yeah.
about that, I'm totally down with this idea. But again, even if that was the plan, I didn't feel, and I think you can make a good movie and making Star Wars this idea. Okay, what force really is force controlling everything? I think that's fine. But
Yeah.
even if that was the idea, it's still, I didn't get that was the idea. You know what
Well,
I mean?
it's not like a plot point. It's almost like an implicit assumption.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
It's like not something that they're trying to, it's almost like they're unconscious. When a myth is written, especially if someone is taking up someone else's symbol set and then presenting their version of it. I mean, think about all the Jesus myths in the past and the ways that different people have taken up the Jesus myth and then put their twist on it to emphasize their version of reality. I think the reason why that kind of a worldview seems implicit is because it is implicit to the kind of worldview of the people who are writing the movie. And so they're not necessarily consciously doing philosophy. I think it's unconsciously embedded in kind of a just like, well, this is kind of how things work sort of a way. Or wouldn't it be cool if things worked this way? But I do think it hurts the movie. I think that it's harder to relate to that or to make a hero's journey out of that. And I think you're right that you kind of feel it in the pacing. That's just like this happens, then this happens, then this happens, and there's kind of no time to reflect because it's almost all just happening.
Yeah, and again, if there's no character arc, if nobody's going from point A to point B to point C, so if Rey already has the Force and she doesn't have to learn anything, then every plot you put her in is useless because the idea of plot development is also character development. If there's no development,
right,
it's like Rian Johnson just undercuts everything about hero journey and mythology, and you already have everything. But if you already have everything and there's no like overarching deepening of a person who goes through experience, then you can do whatever you want and it's not going to work because you cannot relate to that, right?
Yeah, and without struggle, there's no growth. Without risk, there's no potential.
Exactly, yeah.
If she can't fail in a scene or she can't lose or die, then who cares? Who's worried? No one feels invested in that. And that's a problem. That's why it's also good for these kinds of stories to have a love story in them, because then you can sympathize with the passion and love that you would have for another person for why you go throw yourself into an adventure that you don't necessarily want to get into. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But what's the motivation of these characters? Rey is an orphan. Why does she care about the fate of the universe? I mean, does she care about the fate of the universe? Or does she just happen into this position and she just winds up being the savior? Whoops. I mean, without any work even done, and it's just like she just shows up and she's perfect for the job. That's ridiculous. Like, who can relate to that?
Exactly, and because there's no relation, I mean, Rian Johnson did all sorts of plot twists I was not expecting. But none of them matters because there's no depth to anything, right? Just happening without any depth. And if there's no depth, I don't care if he makes 1,000 plot twists that I didn't expect. It doesn't matter.
And how is she more skilled at the Force and a more well-rounded person than Kylo Ren when he has spent his whole life training? And then she just shows up like a couple days into it and is just as good as him. How is it that he can't school her in particular ways? How is it that he's not teaching her things? How is it that he's not much more powerful than her? And then what the fuck does it mean then? I don't know if you're allowed to cuss on this. What does it even mean?
Yeah, of course.
Okay, what the fuck does it mean then? You know, people are getting upset about this kind of stuff because it really resonates. It's like, what does it mean to try to put in all that work if you're just saying that someone can miraculously come and do better? That's not really how things work. When you burn down the Jedi temple and all the wisdom that's contained in that work that was put into those books from years and years and years of knowledge of people who have practiced, and you just throw all that away and act like you're good without having to even study or learn anything, that's crazy. That's like a total rejection of hierarchy. It's just pretending like it's not real. And that's not really how things work. So I don't think it really resonates that well, and it doesn't really make for much of a good story.
Exactly. We did touch a bit on characters, but we're going to go through every character now. We're going to look at who he is and his story arc in The Last Jedi and compare it to The Force Awakens and just see how superficial, and again, none of these characters really grow. So if we have somebody like Finn, let's start with the Finn. Finn basically has exactly the same story arc basically that he had in The Force Awakens. So he was this stormtrooper. He, for some reason, nobody knows. They didn't really explain it. It was probably the Force, right? If you can explain it, it was the Force. So he's this guy who became a good person, and at some point, if you remember Force Awakens, he wanted to run away from the First Order, right? And then he decided to come back. He didn't run away, and then the thing ended. And here it was the same way. So they saved him. So Kylo Ren slashed him in The Force Awakens. So he, again, some awkward humor with water or whatever. And then he again wanted to run away. So again, no deepening. Again, the same character wanted to run away, but then Rose sort of spot him. And once she spot him and he told her that the First Order can track them through the hyperspace, all of a sudden they became friends and go on that casino planet. But if you look at the development of Finn as a character, he's basically the same person. Okay, I'll give him that at the end he tried to sacrifice himself, and we're going to get to that scene.
Yeah.
But if you look at the character arc of Finn, he's basically some guy who wanted to do good, then became a coward, and then did good, And now it's the same thing. He was starting to be good, but then became a coward. I mean, trying to save Rey or something. But again, he was trying to run away, and then he's again trying to be good. But he's the same person. Nothing happened to him. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and you could argue that even him trying to kill himself to some extent is kind of trying to run away.
Even that could be an argument. Yeah.
Kind of a cowardly way to, I mean, but I guess you could say that it is kind of an example of maybe going all in on something. So I don't know. It depends on how you want to read that metaphor.
Yeah.
But I definitely see what you mean, though. I almost feel like he's the token black guy who's like, well, we need a female character and we need a black character. I mean, I'm all for diversity and bringing these people in, but they should serve the plot. It almost feels like they're working backwards from that. And we don't probably want to have them have a relationship together. It almost feels like they're afraid of going that far. So they're just like, awkward friends with each other.
It's weird, yeah.
It's strange. I mean, to some extent, I would think if there's a healthy version of some of this, it's figuring out how the power of love and the power of a system need to come together and synthesize.
Yeah.
The feminine, I mean, this is a generalization, obviously. I can go both ways, but metaphorically, maybe the feminine love is kind of a more short-term, let's get along, let's take care of each other kind of a love, and it can be kind of short-sighted would be the downside of it. And then the more masculine love might be more far-sighted, and it misses some of the short-sighted, the ways the rubber meets the road, So it's like you have these two extreme archetypes of like the masculine that's like super systematized and rigorous and up its own ass and just like tyrannical, the tyrannical father, right? And then the feminine aspect with love, that's the dynamic between Kylo Ren and Rey.
Yeah.
Can she save that masculine with her love? And I'm not sure how Token Black Dude fits into this situation, except for maybe he's another kind of example of bumbling, cowardice, masculine archetype. Maybe to some extent he'll get saved and swept into the feminine collective through their love. I don't know, I guess we'll see.
We'll have to wait for the episode 9 for that, yeah. So the next character is Poe, and I feel like, and a lot of reviewers on YouTube also agree that Poe was probably the least damaged character and the character that made the most sense. So he was like this headstrong, action-first kind of pilot.
Yeah.
And I feel they handled his character quite well. Everything that he did based on the situation he was in made sense. And he basically played that archetype really well. I want to go into action, I want to save, I think that this was probably the only character I felt was really handled well, if we want to put some positives into the movie. The problem with Poe is not so much with him as it is of the movie trying to teach you to learn to listen to the feminist authority, which was General Holdo, right? And the idea that Holdo, that was that violet hair color lady, remember? That she was keeping that secret from him of what her plan really was. And obviously, if she didn't tell him, he's going to be worried and he's going to doubt what she's trying to achieve. So it almost felt like Poe was being portrayed as this stupid man-child.
Right.
You just listen to your feminist superior and don't think about stuff, right? Just blindly listen to authority, right? And again, it's just stupid. I don't know. How do you see that?
I mean, I think that this is a great example of that dichotomy I was just talking about. The feminine perspective needs to realize that masculine, let's take charge, let's run into battle, let's create a system to create order and harmony, that's done out of love too. And so to some extent, I feel like the movie tries to paint him as being childish and too quick to rush in. But if you look at the plan that lady had, it was just hold tight until we run out of gas and die. And if you think about this in relationship to postmodernism, like so many postmodernists are just about their own journey, and they have this it's doomed sort of perspective, like the tyrannical male force is just going to eventually kill us and take us anyway, and we're just slowly running out of steam while this giant machine is crushing humanity, right?
Yeah.
And what are we going to do about it? They're just paralyzed. And then they equate the same kind of heroic, let's save the day, let's get in there and try to fight against it, as more of the same kind of childish, stubborn, mechanistic, masculine, egoic. But it is the healthy masculine aspects that will save the day. I mean, look at the movie. At the end of the day, Luke does come and save the day. He doesn't come and face Kylo Ren and really put a stop to it. But at the end of the day, for the most part, the masculine facing of the enemy is required. It does come down to some crossing of lightsabers and some battles.
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, you're going to actually have to take action and go into that uncomfortable zone and actually do battle. Yeah, you're going to have to do steps forward and say, okay, let's fight this shit out. And then the next character we have is Leia. And we all know her for the beautiful woman she was in the original prequels. I mean, originals, not the original prequels. And whenever somebody says Leia, at this point, I'm not thinking about that old Leia in the white costume from the originals. I'm thinking about Mary fucking Poppins Superman Leia. When I saw that scene, I was like, are you fucking kidding me? Now, there's so many things wrong with that scene. First off, if the ships were moving, that ship would actually have to get away from her. Because when the bridge blew out, the ships were still moving. So it would actually be physically impossible for her to fly back in. But okay, these are details that are not important.
Green's not good at physics, man. They don't like that.
Yeah, I mean, maybe we're gonna touch on some of those little potholes, but I don't care about so much about Star Wars physics. But this idea of Leia being a Force user, I'm okay with it. But to be, I mean, one would expect if you have such a complex ability to be able to use the Force to survive in space. Again, if you're not portraying, if you don't tell us that Leia had some kind of training or something, it's just gonna feel incredibly stupid.
It doesn't even feel willful. I mean, she goes from an unconscious state. It's almost, again, like she's not controlling the Force, like the Force is controlling her. It's like, no, you can't die. I'm the Force. And it's just like, move you back in here. You stay in here. It almost feels more like God intervening than a person actually having developed some kind of meta powers. And that's my major problem with the Force and a lot of this stuff too, is like in some ways it goes way too far, like with a person's ability to manipulate the Force beyond our ability to ever see anything like that before.
Yeah.
But the Force also doesn't even seem like it's something that people are choosing to do a lot of the times. It seems like the Force itself is taking charge and making things happen. And that I don't think we saw in any of the first Star Wars movies.
And it's actually even more baffling because when I saw the bridge scene, when it exploded and she went to space, I was like, yeah, obviously they gotta kill her because Carrie Fisher, as we all know, died in real life, right?
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, I mean, I was actually already accepting the fact, okay, she died in that kind of way, but they didn't really have a choice, right? So I was already preparing myself emotionally, okay, they had to kill her. But then I was like, are you fucking kidding me? The actress died in real life and you're still gonna fucking bring her back? Are you insane? I was like, oh my fucking God, I was just so baffled by that scene. It just doesn't make any sense. I mean, it's just so weird. And like you said, again, it's this, I sort of understand that Leia had like a Force power, but more like in a minor way, like maybe she can sense things, or maybe she can like speak with Luke on some metaphysical realm.
Right.
Like some
They
basic
got some, like,
intuition.
brother-sister telepathy power where if she's
exactly,
super freaking out, she can like scream out with her consciousness to him, something like that maybe.
Yeah, more like intuitive, feminine kind of Force,
Yeah.
if you know what I mean. But like Force that might not necessarily need so much training, but it's I can accept that some Force can be like inherent. That's okay with me. I can understand if Leia can use that intuition even if she didn't learn, right?
But to face the vacuum of space and fly like Superman.
But exactly, yeah. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if she would at some point just start shooting like lasers from her hand, you know? I mean, why not at this point, right? If everybody can do everything, right?
Yeah, I mean, that's how it feels. It just feels like so inauthentic, like nothing is earned. Like she goes from being like not really that tapped in, basically a human, to being the most powerful Jedi we've ever seen who can face the vacuum of space and fly like fucking Mary Poppins.
Yeah, and it just, again, you cannot resonate with that. And then we go to the next character, which was ruined. And again, basically we're almost like, it's not a character arc, it's about ruined characters list. Because basically every character is basically ruined. And as we have Yoda. Oh my God. And again, whenever I think of a character, I always have a stupid scene in the movie that is correlated with that character. And that stupid fucking lightning scene, I was like, give me a fucking break. But okay, let's go with Yoda. So this Yoda, if you remember when Luke Skywalker went to Dagobah, something like that, it was that, right. That's one planet, right? So at the beginning, Yoda was kind of acting like childish and animalistic, like, because he was like testing Luke. So, and also for audience to not get that he's actually a Jedi Master. So I think Lucas was trying to hide it at the beginning, right? And he was like acting like this funny Yoda. I don't know if you remember that.
Yeah. He was like a funny little Zen master guy who was...
Yeah, exactly. But then when he really revealed himself as a Jedi Master, he became that wise old man.
Right.
But here, this Yoda was again that funny Yoda where he was testing Luke Skywalker back then. But it doesn't make sense that he would keep that personality now because we already know who this Yoda is, right? And I don't understand why Rian Johnson put in the funny ghost Yoda and not the wise old man Yoda. Again, and I like the funny Yoda, but it just,
I mean, it goes back to the postmodernism, man, the pre-trans fallacy. We're talking about like, oh, real wisdom is when you don't actually care about wisdom and you just act like a child. Like children are the real enlightened ones. They just laugh as books burn because who needs books? It's like, wow.
Yeah, and not only that. Okay, so again, just destroying the Jedi lore. It's like those books in the tree, right? But he, I don't know what's worse, him just destroying everything and saying knowledge is not important, or we all have it in us, but also using, again, just breaking Star Wars rules. There's no point where Ghost can actually manipulate real objects in the real world. As Star Wars rules have it, if you're a forced ghost, you cannot actually, you can give people advice, right? They can like talk to
Right,
you, but
exactly.
you cannot actually physically manipulate. For him to not only use the force in a ghost form and use the lightning from the sky,
Right.
but actually, and even destroying the Jedi books, all that wisdom. I mean, both of those things are just horribly stupid, in my opinion.
Yeah, man, and I think a lot of it goes back to magical thinking. I think if you think about the ghosts or the spirits of the past as archetypes, yeah, of course we all have these archetypes that we know in our mind and we can kind of summon them up and be like, what would my mom say to me in this kind of a situation? And you can kind of have that sort of an inner communication with these spirits or these archetypes from our past. Like that cashes out and makes sense. But to think, like you're saying, that they could then make magic happen in the actual world is probably going too far. And you're right. It's like another example of something that we haven't seen in Star Wars before.
Yeah, it breaks the rules of Star Wars. And even if you try to do that, you cannot just introduce that in that kind of way. For me, any new force ability is for me like a,
Has to be explained.
like basically a force is also like a character, and
Right.
a force ability is also a character, right? So he needs to create some situation where this is, it's like a tutorial, like, okay, now this is a new power that is also possible, right? You gotta build up to that power. You cannot just, oh, and here's just Yoda shooting lightning out of nowhere, right? You can't do that. You gotta introduce that kind of power.
Yeah, there's got to be some kind of explanatory power. The more you move it in the direction of magic, the less real it is, the less people are going to care. The more you make it this like, and she was a magic ninja out all of a sudden with, from nowhere. And look, she went and saved the day. And look, she's got a lightsaber. It's like you have all the things in place without any of the justification for them.
Exactly, and you need to build up the justification before that can be used. And imagine how this power could be used in numerous situations, right? Why didn't Luke Skywalker use that lightning force power and try to destroy the AT-AT walkers on that great planet? You can use, again, this is like a new plot line now, right?
Yeah, I mean, when you can just magic everything around, why even have these big battle scenes? You could just have one of these awesome Jedi magic people go out there and just smash everything with the wave of one hand.
Yeah, exactly, yeah.
Like, that's what I'm saying. Like, at that point, the whole thing becomes ridiculous because you have these beings who can just throw around absolute magic power without even having to work for it or like build it up or learn new abilities or whatever. It's just on tap for them. That destroys the story. That ruins it because you're doing too much with it to the point where it's not even something that's a struggle to manifest. It dehumanizes Star Wars. And I think that maybe that's what a lot of people are feeling is just this. Not only are there archetypes that they might have resonated with getting trashed and dragged through the mud, demonized and castrated and ripped to shreds, but also it's dehumanized to the point where nothing even matters and everything is up for grabs and the force is just going to take care of it all anyways. A lot of these themes really do remind me about like a lot of the problems I see when I talk to postmodern people in general, just their magical thinking and their attitude towards life. It's not like I am a Jedi, I am a special person who has developed these capacities and because I have this great potential, I'm going to use it to try to serve the world and save the galaxy and save my friends and make the world a better place. In this version, it's just like, well, the Force will take care of me. It'll put me in the right place at the right time. It's that like let go and let God type of spirituality versus the I'm going to have to realize this if it's going to happen kind of spirituality. You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah, exactly. I agree. I mean, that is a problem with postmodernism, yeah.
It's just magic. It's not something that actually has to be earned. It's not metaphysical capabilities in the way of like being able to manipulate a situation with mind control or something like that. Like you could see that from a magical perspective, but you could also see that as a kind of ability that could come online when you get over your ego and you're not just caught up in these simple binaries of the actual discussion and all that, but you can see past all that to what's really going on. And you can talk to a person on a different level or reach into their heart and like do these kinds of super skillful communications to the point where things just seem to go your way. Those kinds of things can cash out metaphorically and have a lot of value, where you can see people in reality do this kind of thing and you're like, wow, that was a real, these are not the droids you're looking for kind of a moment. That's super impressive. But if it's just magic that you're throwing around all over the place and that you just pull out of your ass, that's just Fantasyland shit. It's a pre-trans fallacy, you know?
Yeah, exactly, and these powers, again, if they are just created out of thin air with no practice or whatever, they don't have any depth, right? And if you don't have any depth, people are not going to resonate. If people are not resonate, then you're going to have a 45% on Metacritic score, and that's a huge problem. Yeah,
it's some straight up Mickey Mouse bullshit.
Exactly. Okay, so next character we have on the line, on the chopping block, is Rey, and obviously this is probably one of the most polarizing characters besides Luke Skywalker, because she's a woman and people call her Mary Sue, and she's supposed to be main protagonist, although one could argue that Kylo Ren was the main character in The Last Jedi. But anywho, we already touched a bit on Rey. Obviously the main problem, again, I have, just like with pretty much all characters, is that she has no development, right? She came from nothing. We don't know anything about her, yet she knows how to use the Force. How do you see Rey? Why do you think what's the main problem with Rey?
I think you're right. I think that people criticize her because she seems like she comes from nothing and yet has all these kinds of abilities that she didn't earn. And that is upsetting to a lot of people. I like the name of Rey, Light.
The Ray of Light, yeah.
And, you know, it goes back
like
to
the
Skywalker and all that kind of sun mythology and stuff. But it would be great to see her actually have some struggle, and it would be great to see her care about something. Like, I mean, to have some skin in the game and to be a love interest, or to have some kind of love interest, or to have some kind of, like, passion. I mean, her parents are gone. She's pretty much an orphan. She's hanging out with these people, and she's friends with some of them. But what kind of hero's journey is she on? Without any development, what is she trying to learn? You're saying, like, what's her character arc? What is she going from into the unknown to get the knowledge of the unknown and bring it back? Like, what's her journey? I'm still trying to figure that out myself. Maybe we'll see, you know, maybe it is a little bit of like a Beauty and the Beast thing where she goes from being kind of a loner to maybe being in this kind of bigger extended family, like working for this higher purpose, and maybe she does help the potentially unhealthy masculine figure to use his power for good, and she tames him with her heart and her love, and they become partners. That'd be great. And I'm probably jumping ahead, but as of right now, I don't see, like you said, if she's even the main character. She's up front, but what's her story? What is she learning?
Well, if we take a look at her from The Force Awakens, so I think the main idea at the beginning was the idea of her finding her parents. But then Lupita, that orange character, I forgot the name, tells her that the parents are... The idea is whatever you're seeking is not going to be in the past or the planet of Jakku, but she needs to go forward, and then she's going to find what her parents are, right? And so I think the idea of Force Awakens was that she's like finding her source in a way. Like, who is she? Which is fine. Okay, I can understand. The Force Awakens Rey kind of makes sense. But then at the end of The Force Awakens, as I sort of understood, she got beyond the idea that she's looking for parents. So she sort of like accepted it. She accepted the fact she's not going to find them. And that she just needs to become her own person. But then in The Last Jedi, she's still looking for those parents, which is fine, because I don't know exactly what JJ was looking for. Was he like trying? Because I assume
we find out that her parents are just nobody.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, they're
like
some drug addicts. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And I think that what I was thinking was that JJ was probably setting up that her parents were some known character, which would usually be the quote-unquote big plot twist. Like, obviously, it shouldn't be Luke Skywalker. I think that was too obvious. But maybe some idea was to be Obi-Wan, which would be great, because they're actually planning to do a spin-off movie of Obi-Wan. And that would actually make a lot of sense. I think Obi-Wan being a parent would be amazing, because he was against Anakin Skywalker, his old apprentice. In the prequels, he was against them being together, but then he realized that Anakin was the father when he saw Padme pregnant. And then for him, it would be an interesting character arc if you did like a standalone movie of Obi-Wan and he fell in love, and then he would be the parent of Rey. I think that would be a good arc. Obviously, it could be obvious. A lot of people would guess that, but I still feel it would be kind of satisfying.
Yeah.
But the fact that
that would be something.
Luke obviously would be too obvious, so for them, like Ben or whatever, to be brothers, I think that would be obvious. But Obi-Wan would be, I think, just right. But again, for them being nobody doesn't help us understand Rey better. So we still don't know, okay, who is she? It's weird.
Maybe it's something like we over-glorify things, and we maybe project more meaning into them than they actually have, and we think, oh, our parents must be some grand things, but when you really dig into it, you find that they're just some nobody.
And I would be, yeah.
Maybe. maybe it could cash out like that in some kind of way where it's like you got to get over trying to worry about your parents and just do you. Like you're kind of saying, like maybe that's some of her arc or something like that, some growing up and taking responsibility.
Sure, I mean, I'm totally down with the idea, but again, the way it was shot, you didn't get that feeling.
Yeah.
So
it's still, we're having to do a lot of work to read these things in. So
exactly.
it's not clearly,
I mean, it's easy to find.
It's not clear where they're going with it.
The problem is we can easily find integral ideas in this movie, right? Well, force is something more, blah, blah, blah. I mean, it's easy to find them, but in terms of objectively, what character development, what the depth, what pacing this movie has, it's just absolutely horrible movie in those almost like objective terms. It's basically just filmmaking 101. How do you create a deep character? And I don't know what this film was trying to do or try to tell us, but whatever it did try to tell us, it failed miserably because I don't get any of those ideas you're saying. It didn't portray that. The movie didn't give me those ideas. And I'm down with those ideas.
It doesn't feel like myth making. It just feels like, oh, let's put a lightsaber in a black guy and a white girl's hand and make a movie about it. It's not like working within the overarching symbolic poetry to like weave a narrative or to craft these characters or to say something. It's just props with lightsabers and force magic.
So remember that scene when she was in the cave and there was like that mirror scene?
Yes.
And when she asked the mirror who her parents was and it showed her herself. For me, that I didn't understand what Rian Johnson was trying to convey. Like she should like mother and father herself, or she should find the parents within herself, or that she is the creation of the force and her force. Or I understand some kind of symbolicism was inside, like the idea. So it was mirror that extends forever, right? When she did that clap thingy. And so did you understand the symbolism that Rian Johnson was trying to convey? Because I didn't understand exactly what Rian was trying to tell us with that mirror scene. Did you understand? What's your sort of mythological interpretation of that?
You know, I'm not exactly sure too, because I think it's like what I notice in a lot of postmodern ideas is they talk about a lot of stuff that might sound deep, but you really have to do work to read depth into it because it's not there. It's like, it's hollow, it's empty. And yeah, maybe like you're saying, like you can find depth in there if you really dig, but even then it feels like you're giving it the benefit of the doubt, not like it's like, well, that's what they were trying to say. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, I mean, like I could talk about Indra's net and like this idea of these jewels that all reflect each other. And you could say, you know, we're all one, or that there's hurdles all the way down or something like that. Or like you're saying, you could read into it this idea of you need to be the parent or the creator of your own life and your own reality. Or you could read it kind of as like absolute narcissism. Narcissus is the character who gets caught in his own reflection. So there's a lot of ways that you could maybe do something with that symbol, but I'm not sure what it has to do with her character and Star Wars. Maybe someone could, you know, school me on that, or maybe they have a better interpretation, but that's what it feels like to me. It feels like to me like pretending to be deep, but not really knowing what you're saying.
Yeah, I agree. I think that prequels and the original, especially the originals, prequels not so much, but at least in both the originals and prequels, I sort of got the idea of the themes. You know, at no point was I ever confused in the originals of what the themes were.
Yeah.
But here, like you said, we can find all sorts of symbolism and meaning, but because there's no character arc, because it breaks all the rules of Star Wars and some basic hero journey rules and everything, it just doesn't make any sense. Like you said, it's trying to portray as if it's deep, but in reality, it's just lazy because nobody knows what they're doing.
Yeah, it's like the visual equivalent of word salad. Like when you see Luke go into his cave and he sees
The father.
his ultimate fear, and then he kills it and he unmasks it and sees that it's himself. Boom. That is deep poetry. You could become that power. That's your own shadow. The Father is you. This inner struggle of, is the machine going to destroy humanity or serve humanity? But like you're saying, what is this saying? Like, what does it mean in the context of Star Wars and with this person and the plot and I don't know. Maybe I'm still giving it the benefit of the doubt, but I'm kind of like, what happens in the next one? How do they resolve all of this? Are they going to be able to tie it up and make some of it mean something, or will they drop the ball like they've continued to do?
To be honest, I don't know exactly how JJ is going to fix this. I think JJ should probably do all three movies. I think it was a mistake to put it to Rian Johnson's hands. Because I think with such a trilogy, I think there should be like one person or two people who are responsible for for consistency and for this overarching theme, for idea, okay, what are we really trying to say? Rian Johnson just threw everything JJ did and just said, fuck it, I'm going to do my own thing, right? And it doesn't work. I mean, you gotta have some consistency. I don't know what the hell were those guys talking. Did JJ like say, so this is what I was going with Luke's character, this is what I was going with Rey's character, I think this is what you should do. Did they even like speak with each other? I mean, it's like basic.
It does feel like it's like very much like a postmodern philosophy. It's like far-sighted mishmashing and pre-trans confusion, not really a consistent and clear view, just kind of like a mess and a clusterfuck of mishmashing and throwing a bunch of things at the wall and seeing what sticks, like a diversity without any kind of discernment, just kind of a mess in a lot of the ways that they think that they're being deep or making a point or expressing things, actually just reveal some kind of shallow, pre-rational, magical, mythical thing that doesn't really cash out into anything actually deep or true.
Exactly. And like I said, if I was the director of episode 7 and I gave it to another director, I assume JJ probably read the script. And why didn't he say anything to Ryan? Did you just let him be? Just try and do your fucking thing? Because I would be insulted if I created this episode 7 and then see somebody just take everything I tried to build up and just say, fuck you, I'm going to do my own thing. I would be, I don't know, again, even their communication, how the fuck did those two directors communicate with each other? It doesn't make any sense. It's weird.
I don't know. It feels like for something like this, that it's like 3 parts to the same movie, like Lord of the Rings or something, where one part clearly leads into the next part. Like they should know how the third one ends before they even start, so that way they can be setting up the parts for the payoff in the beginning. And
yeah, exactly.
I don't know. Are they just making them one at a time and figuring out what happens next as they go?
Yeah, that's actually the idea. Yeah, they're making them up as they go. Because as I recall, there are actually some.
It's a terrible idea.
The Ryan Johnson interviews, he actually said he just, after The Force Awakens was made, he just like wrote it by himself, and that's it. And then they started shooting. Like nobody revised anything. I mean, they were like, they're supposed to be some kind of Disney people who said whether something is right or wrong, but whatever. We don't know the behind the scenes.
Put a black guy in that one. Make that one Asian.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
That's like the feedback that he gets. He puts together the script, and then they come in and they like Disney wash it, make sure this is PC, like, which I'm all good with diversity, but when it feels so forced, it's like,
yeah, the force feels forced,
right?
Yeah.
And it's supposed to be a metaphorst.
Exactly. Oh, I like the puns here. Yeah. Okay, so talking about force, let's go to the main character that most people in the YouTube reviews and in general all the audience had a complaint, and that's of course our beloved, forever optimistic Luke Skywalker, who of course now is not beloved, forever optimistic, but a bitter old man who wants to die. And we never saw this character arc. It's just, here I am and I want to die. So Luke, again, if you look at like the hero journey, at the beginning, he was, of course, the one who went on the hero journey, and now he is supposed to play the role of the master. And obviously, if you don't want to repeat the theme, I can sort of understand Ryan Johnson from that situation. So Rey comes, and obviously he can play the role of Yoda, which could be the obvious thing. But maybe I understand that, okay, I want to do something different, and I'm okay with that. I'm okay that Luke was grumpy, but you gotta give me a reason why he was grumpy, how he became that way, and why Rey would reject him. So I'm not necessarily against the idea of grumpy Luke Skywalker, but again, the way he was portrayed in this movie, like this bitter old man who basically wants to die. He literally says, I came here to die. It's weird. I don't know. It's just, why did these two people even meet? He didn't teach anything to Rey. I mean, they're supposed to have 3 lessons. I forget all 3 of them. I don't even know if there were 3 lessons, even though there was no like really training montage. They did like some kind of meditation together, but that really didn't count. I mean, I didn't feel like that was a training. It's just weird and all over the place. What was this meeting about? Okay, only thing we learned is that Luke is desperate. He was disappointed that the Jedi Order screwed up when Darth Sidious took over. So he was disappointed about that, and then he became bitter for some reason. It's just weird. It doesn't make any sense. How did you interpret Luke Skywalker and the relationship he had with Rey?
I think it's interesting. I think what we almost see is that Luke Skywalker learns through trying to train other Jedi that hierarchy is bad, and that trying to fight and to be an active force in the world, any attempt at power will absolutely, inevitably corrupt you, is basically where the idea is with this, it seems. And so this is a fear of power and claiming your power. And so you have an emasculated Luke. You have a dude who's afraid of his power. He's even stopped using the Force, right?
Yeah, he disconnected from the Force. Yeah, exactly.
He disconnects himself from the flow of life and basically says, stop the ride, I want off. No wonder people are pissed off about this. He's supposed to be the person who brings balance back to the Force. And we've been waiting over the course of 6 movies to see some of this start to get realized in an actual way, where it's not just BS. There's been so much speculation about what that means for him to bring balance back to the Force. We think that he's going to include the machine, but not in a way where the machine has taken him over, but where it becomes like his right hand and it serves him and it serves humanity. We're going to see the system and the Force merge in some kind of way where they balance. And what we see is this dude who's afraid to use his power, and he literally rejects power as soon as she brings it to him and says, I won't even help you to better get in line with the Force and live your life because the dark side is too scary. Luke Skywalker is afraid of the dark, and the light doesn't fear the dark. So it's a very unhealthy masculine archetype, and it's not at all what Mark Hamill or any of the fans of Star Wars want to see in their main character, their main hero archetype over the course of so many movies, to just be emasculated and disintegrate like that.
One idea, and we're going to talk about fixing Star Wars, but I had an idea for the Force Awakens cliffhanger. When Rey came to Luke, he would actually lift her, he would use the Force and Force choke her and lift her from the ground. And that would be the end of the movie. So what I would like almost imply that when he came to this planet and read the Jedi text, he would actually be in tap with the dark side of the Force, and maybe he would become evil because of that, and then maybe Rey could be like a beacon of light and remember, oh, he's a light person or something like that. I think that would be a better character arc for him. So he would actually, at the end of the day, maybe become entangled with the dark side, but Rey would be the ray of light, and maybe even her teaching him to return back to lightness or something like that. I think that would be a better arc.
Yeah, I mean, that would be great if we could actually see the feminine character to bring light and to do this kind of saving the masculine energy and making it healthy again by injecting love and connection into
Yeah,
it.
exactly. Yeah, obviously, but again, Rey would have to have some depth. She doesn't have. We don't know who she is. She's just some orphan from the planet.
She's just some person.
And at least,
yeah.
how would we, again, Rey would have to be developed from the Force Awakens. And again, this is when we need to have an overarching picture of what we want to do with these characters, right? So we can portray Rey like this, even though she doesn't have parents, how can we portray her and put her in situations when she can show that she's this like healthy, feminine kind of girl who can be strong but also has vulnerabilities, and they could portray her like a strong woman, but again, because she's so loving,
her vulnerabilities give her strength.
Exactly, and sometimes even her vulnerabilities can screw her over, right? So
Sure.
it's both, right? So we can see a little depth here, but again, none of this would work if the character of Rey is not developed well. But we're gonna go maybe deeper that when we talk about the fixings.
Well, at least Anakin, with him, like they tried to explain it in terms of midichlorians, so there was still something reasonable being talked about. But with Rey, they have chances to try to explain it, and they just throw those opportunities away.
Yeah, when it comes to midichlorians, a lot of people were like, again, the idea was that when Lucas put in the midichlorians, the idea that they sort of demystified the Force, but I don't think that's the case, because, I don't know, do you remember when Lord Darth Sidious talked about Darth Plagueis, which was his master? So their idea was that Darth Plagueis, who was the master of Darth Sidious, he was more, not so much like a Sith master, as more like a Sith scientist. And basically what he sort of tried to manipulate the midichlorians to create life. So he was like this mad scientist in a way. That's how he was portrayed, I think,
That's awesome.
in extended universe. Imagine that being part of the plot line of these three movies, right?
That would be awesome. That would be so
There was a lot of
interesting.
ideas that Snoke could be Darth Plagueis, which I think would be great. Everybody wanted that because there's so many fucking Snoke theories about who he is. Nobody cares anymore. But, that would be such a great idea. So I don't think putting a Force into midichlorian count, I don't think that necessarily destroys the mysticism. You know what I mean?
No, it's interesting. And you're right. Like, man, what a missed opportunity with that Snoke character. Like, they're just going to introduce him as like the most powerful evil Jedi ever and then immediately kill him.
We're going to come to
with
that.
No
we're
kind
going
of
to come to that.
backstory or explanation. It's just like, what are you doing here with these characters? It's not a mythology. Like I said, it just feels like a bunch of props given lightsabers and been like, let's make a fight scene.
Yeah, you can find mythological themes, but because they're all mishmashed with no sense. I mean, like I said, we can find like mythological themes like we did before with Rey in her cave scene, right? We can find a lot of symbolism. So what that's supposed to mean.
But it's unavoidable to some extent to find mythological themes when you're throwing archetypes into situations.
Of course, yeah, but it's still...
But it almost says more about you unconsciously, psychologically, than it's actually intentional mythology making. You know what I mean?
Exactly. I mean, yeah, and that's what people do. I mean, with a lot of conspiracy theories and so on, we constantly are finding patterns. And obviously you can find patterns in the Last Jedi and say, oh, this is deeper than you think, right? But again, even mythology, in my opinion, has some certain rules, and even basic movie making, right? You gotta develop characters, you gotta have character arcs, and none of that was in this movie, unfortunately.
Yeah.
Okay, let's go
Tragic.
to the next character. We're gonna come to Snoke soon. Let's go to the Hux, and that's not necessarily Hux is a character. We're gonna talk about stupid white men with no development, and not just white men with no development, but also the idea of what Snoke represents. So obviously, the original idea of the Empire was this Second World War, Hitler, fascism, right? So they're basically representing that, right? Hux at the beginning in The Force Awakens was like this, like Hitlerish kind of young Hitler kind of character, but here he just became this stupid, goofy white man who, you know what I mean? He like from this serious kind of character, he became like this second hand to Snoke who is stupid. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, you mean just the yelly, screamy, blonde-haired white
Yeah,
dude?
exactly.
Hitler
Yeah,
guy?
exactly. Who's stupid and who falls for your mama jokes and falls for the when with the stupid humor at the beginning.
Right, it's just more talking trash on power and
Yeah,
masculinity and ego games and it's just pointing out the tyrannical, crazy father figure. It's like it's to some extent it's an extreme straw man on all systems, as if all governance means dictatorship or something like that.
exactly. But again, if you want to portray somebody like that, you gotta give him depth. If you don't give a character depth,
Right.
why is Hux like that? We don't know anything about Hux. I'm not saying every Star Wars character needs to have a backstory, but when we see these characters, when we see Hux, just by the way he speaks, what he's talking about, what he's saying, how is he doing his things, we learn about the characters through their interactions, right? Because we
Right.
cannot just shoot pre-story about every character. But again, with Hux, he had like some kind of an arc, this white supremacist Hitler guy, but here he's just some goofy idiot. And obviously all people in the First Order were just evil white men, if you didn't notice. I don't remember any black guy in the First
Right.
Order. I don't think that's a coincidence, right? Again, it's like almost this white guilt because white people, enslaved black people
Right.
and so on. And again, it's First Order is like this sterile Hitlerish white man, which is ironic because this is what America has right now as a president, which is,
Well, they got that really white girl from Lord of the Rings in there too.
I think,
Right, and
was it
that's
Game
kind
of
of the
Thrones, I think?
yeah, that's
Yeah.
what it is. I'm sorry, Game of Thrones. Thanks for the
Yeah,
correction.
no problem.
Yeah, and that's the good thing about putting Token in this thing, right? Is that maybe some of those stormtroopers are actually people of color under there, or maybe they're not just robots or cartoons. Maybe they're people. So that tries to act like there's some diversity on the dark side. But one of the things that always kind of bugged me about the Star Wars universe is the kind of like extreme black and white archetype. The good thing about Token is that you have him at least switch from the dark side to the light side, and you get to see that, oh, maybe he's not just a bad figure. Same thing with Anakin and Darth Vader, is that you see that he can move back and forth from the light side to the dark side to the light side.
Exactly, yeah.
And that they are just like humans, and maybe there's pros and cons to both the dark and the light side of the Force. If we could get more nuance like that, that's what I was really wanting for before, and now we're spending a lot of time talking about hollow characters. But this kind of nuance between the dark and the light side, to be able to talk about the cons of the way that some Jedis are like a little bit too disinterested and maybe they need to take more of an active thing without going to the dark side, finding that kind of balance to where they can both have that passion and the peace at the same time.
Yeah, it's that
The-
healthy
the
integration.
system and the
exactly, yeah.
intuition. Yeah, exactly.
Okay, so the
And so building more nuance on the dark side characters and making them actually more people and giving them reasons for why they're in those positions, that actually would help to go along a lot more towards the direction of what you're talking about, of creating more of a humanized, instead of just these like, look, this guy's a Nazi.
And we're gonna we're gonna talk about these themes of black and white and grayscale when we're gonna talk about fixing Star Wars and maybe put in some of our ideas how to change or fix this. But let's go to the second, I assume the main character, which is our emo friend Kylo Ren. And again, Kylo was sort of interesting in The Force Awakens. I don't think he should have put his mask off. I think he either should have put his mask off when he killed Han Solo at the end of episode 7. I think he put his mask off too maturely. But also he just, even in The Force Awakens, he didn't feel like an evil person, like you said, an evil boy. And if you don't have a credible antagonist, an evil person, again, there's no tension, right? Because Darth Vader was from the beginning established as this badass guy, right? And especially Darth Sidious, who was at the beginning of the originals, was like this really mystique, evil kind of Sith Lord, and he had that evil presence, and you were like, fuck, you don't want to mess with this guy. But with Kylo Ren, you don't get that sense of evilness. You just think, oh, he's just some immature, toxic little child who cannot control basic emotions, and you cannot take such a person seriously as a bad guy. And if you cannot take a bad guy seriously, you're not going to have a tension between good and bad.
I think you're right. He does get demasked pretty quick, and it's pretty quickly revealed that he's just some spoiled little brat. I think what they want to do is they want to paint a lot of the masculine figures as like rebellious little children throwing a fit.
Yeah.
The idea is that we want it our way. And if we don't have what we want, we're going to throw a fit and we'll go, ape shit and kill people if we have to until we get our way. And I want power and I want to rule, as if any kind of attempt to bring order to things is equivalent with that. I think that's basically how they generally want to paint masculinity, and he's a great example of that. His will to power is he's mad at his parents.
Yeah, and because of that, he makes a lot of irrational decisions. Because when you look at somebody like Vader and Sidious, even though they were evil, they still were rational in terms of strategy, how they're gonna pursue. Like Darth Vader had this plan of how he's gonna engage Luke Skywalker. So when they had the engagement in the Cloud City, you felt like it's not like Vader was just some childish Sith Lord who wanted to attack his son. He was like deep, methodical, evil person with some good insight, and that was really portrayed incredibly well in the second of the original, The Empire Strikes Back. But here, like you said, you have just some child, I want it my way, with no rationality, no rational thinking, no strategic thinking, just my way or the highway. If something doesn't go my way, I'm just gonna use my fucking lightsaber and start stabbing shit, And just, it feels like you said, like emo child, not some deep, strategic, dark kind of. And I'm not necessarily even against such a character, but it's going too far with this idea of emo child. You still gotta have some credibility, some depth to the character, not just, it's not going my way, I'm gonna cry and start slashing lightsaber all over the place.
You could say the same thing to some extent about the rebellion. They're actually called the rebellion. They're the rebel forces. Like, where's their plan? Where's their ultimate strategy for how to do shit better? It's easy to point fingers and be like, they're mean tyrants, but how would you do it better? If you don't actually have some kind of an actual plan to do shit better, then you really are just kind of throwing a fit in public. That's the thing that you don't really see from the rebellion, which, I mean, I think that's been what they kind of tried to do in the prequels, maybe, is talk about some of these ideas about what a better type of system might be. But that's one of the things that you don't really see, is that you don't see the rebellion with a plan. And someone like Kylo, his plan is only like, I want to rule because the opportunity is there or something. I don't know. Daddy issues.
It's weird. It's superficial. And like I said, if the main character is not credible, the main villain, then you're fucked, basically, and we're fucked. And I think that's a good point to switch to a villain that was credible, and that's Snoke. And I really liked Snoke. Although I will agree that a lot of Snoke's greatness was not so much from his portrayal, because we didn't saw a lot of him in The Force Awakens, but there were so many fucking YouTube theories around who Snoke is, like from Darth Plagueis to reincarnation of Sidious to some Liberian Jedi from the Attack of the Clones. There were some, like there was Mace Windu was Snoke, Leia was Snoke. I mean, there were so many freaking theories of who Snoke was. And like you mentioned before, such a waste of a character, because at least Snoke felt like authentic, smart. Like he really did look like a Sidious 2.0. So
we were all really excited to see who he was, and then it turns out that he's just this like Star Wars-esque prop. He's just some alien guy who we can see on a hologram, who ends up being the evil master behind Kylo Ren. But who cares about who he is or what he is? We'll just kill him.
And again, I'm sure, nobody was expecting that. So again, this was like Ryan playing with us, like, well, you're not gonna fucking expect this. Let me show you what I got. And then he just kills Snoke, right? But you cannot do that. That's what's even worse is the fact that I would understand, let's say that through episode 7 and 8, Kylo became like this deep-minded strategic Sith Lord. And at some point, because he developed as a whiny boy to a strategic deep Sith Lord, then he could at some point dethrone his master, right? But Kylo Ren never had the character arc of being this whiny child to a strategic, deeper, intellectual Sith Lord, where he could use his own powers to blind Snoke and eventually kill him. He's still this emo kid, and this emo kid managed to kill Snoke, while Snoke was saying he can read his every fucking thought. How does that make any historical kind of sense? You know what I mean? It's just stupid.
It's stupid. He has all this magic power. I mean, it's when you go that far magic, like we've already talked about, it just ruins it. It's just stupid. It just feels cheesy. It doesn't feel earned. It just feels like the rules are all out the window at this point, and so really you could do whatever the fuck you want, and there's no tension anymore.
It's
just like, what's gonna happen?
When I was watching the movie, there was no tension, and even all of the plot twist, and this was definitely one of the major ones, because I'll be honest, I didn't expect that coming. It just, you're not like shocked in a good way, like, wow, I didn't see that coming, but you're like, what the fuck is going on here? Why is this happening? I mean, Kylo is just some emo kid. How can an emo kid be able to hide that force? Because he was like killing him with the lightsaber using the force.
And how does him and that girl who's never trained and has only been doing lightsaber battles for like, one day, go up against this elite army together and they're like equals.
Yeah, I get when you
Like, it would be one thing if he like could teach her something. That would be great. But you can't have that. You can't have a male figure who's especially evil being able to teach the girl. I mean, that would actually be kind of beautiful and cool if they did that, where he taught her something and they could learn from each other. That gets back to that
integration.
meeting in the middle.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
integration. The door is still open for some of that.
They can still do that, but I think even like from episode 7 to 8, there are so many beautiful missed opportunities. And like you said, like these ideas we had now, there's just one of them, but there are many of opportunities like this. Some people said that we should have, and that is something a lot of people expected, like this idea that we would see the training from both sides. So you'd see like the Luke Skywalker's light side training versus the Snoke's dark side training. It's like the Rocky the movie.
Oh, that would have been awesome.
Remember Rocky the movie when Rocky was like using those natural things to train, and then you have that Russian guy who had all the machines. And
Yeah,
so you
yeah.
have almost like two training montages. You see how Snoke trains Kylo and how Luke would train Rey. And so many missed opportunities. I don't even want to go into this because I'm just gonna feel sorry.
That's a very interesting rabbit hole to
And
go down.
we
though.
we
I
haven't
like-
really
I like
seen
where you're
this. I mean, we've seen some of the training in the Attack of the Clones and obviously in the New Hope, the original trilogy. But again, we could go deeper into this training. I mean, training wasn't such an integral part of the original trilogies. It was obviously part of it, but it didn't go deep enough. We could go a lot further now, but no.
Oh yeah,
Just-
the Jedi Sith philosophy is actually really cool, and what you have is this: they basically take a shit on the philosophy and they reject the training and just give everything to them for free and set the books on fire. It's like, okay, well, I guess we're not going to have a respect for the tradition. That's why part of why I think people are like they're ruining Star Wars or it's a disgrace to the symbol set or to the mythology is because to some extent they are doing that. They're just turning it into a Disney World ride, and they've kind of robbed it of a lot of its depth by making it so simplistic and cheesy.
Exactly, and again, it just sterilizes the mythology, sterilizes the depth, and yeah, you have just some mythological mishmashing with no rules, and obviously you can interpret it however you want, but there's no rules, there's no ground rules, there's no development, nothing. It's just horrible, yeah.
You know what I'm thinking right now is I'm thinking I don't want to talk too much trash or whatever. Let's start a podcast battle. But when I saw the integral Daily Revolver version of interpretation of Star Wars, their talk on it, they just seemed to be happy and love it and give it nothing but praise. And I didn't really hear them read much into the metaphors or think about the implication of any of these symbols or what it says about the culture wars or really any of that. It was probably some simple, oh, that sounds integral or that sounds like it could be postmodern or something like that. But not really much of an in-depth analysis there, was it?
Yeah, when I was watching, I was like, what the hell were those guys smoking when they were watching this movie? And yeah, like you said, I mean, you can find integral ideas in this movie. Obviously you can. But the way the movie was shot, not only were those quote-unquote, and we can even argue if they're integral, but let's say they are. Even if that's the case, the movie was shot so badly that I didn't get any integral ideas whatsoever. I don't know, did we even watch the same movie? I mean, their analysis of the movie was, I don't know, didn't say they see the freaking Metascore, it's like 45%. I mean, obviously something had to go wrong. I know Jeff Salzman is not a huge Star Wars fan. I think he acknowledges that, and obviously you can see that he doesn't understand the movie at all. But the other two, that woman and that guy, they are supposed to be Star Wars fans, and I don't understand how they didn't see that there are so many problems with the movie. I mean, it's weird.
They were just like, yay, Star Wars.
Yeah, no critical analysis, no pretense fallacy, no correlation between what's going on, no social justice agenda, just, oh, it's all integral now. It's weird.
This is why I don't really like the Daily Evolver that much, is because I wind up slapping my forehead most of the time when I'm listening to it, and I'm like, where are the integral distinctions being made? You're just being like, that's integral, and this integral, and that's green, and this was orange, or whatever. It's like, so freshman.
And another thing they said, I mean, I can understand the idea. So what they were saying is what Rian Johnson tried to do is he tried to redirect the hero's journey. So original ideas, you meet the master teaches you slay the dragon and become a better person out of it. So what Rian Johnson tried, and this is what the Daily Evolver I think said, is like the idea is, well, I don't need you, teacher. I'm gonna do it myself. So he was like trying to make almost like an opposite thing. I already know everything, so fuck you, Luke Skywalker. And I'm sort of fine with that if that would be somewhat, if Rey character would be established in episode 7, that she managed to get through some kind of arc so she could be mature for episode 8. And when she came to Luke, she would say, fuck you, I don't need you. I already had this adventure in episode 7, so I get the idea. But because they didn't do that, I mean, it just doesn't feel authentic.
Or if she studied herself, that would be one thing
Or at
too.
least
But you
something
know,
like that,
just to
yeah.
get if she actually got a hold of some of those books that got burned and read some of that stuff herself, and that she went beyond the teacher model. Or I mean, like there's ways that could be healthy as an expression of this, but this is just like the postmodern rejection of hierarchy and being like, whatever, all we need is to just wish for it and it'll happen. It's a really childish worldview that it's presenting, and it doesn't really cash out that well in terms of good metaphoric poetry.
Exactly. And
Maybe it's great if you're a postmodernist and you like magical thinking, but a lot of people are really upset by it.
I agree with them in terms of, yeah, you probably shouldn't do the standard hero journey, that was because then you're just repeating themes. So I can understand the idea if you want to change this dynamic of what the teacher is now. And like you said, but again, if you want to do that route, again, you got to establish this almost in episode 7. Like you said, what kind of adventures Rey needs to go through to have this development. When she comes to Luke, then she can metaphorically say, fuck you, I already know it. And maybe Luke can be used for something else, not teaching her. Maybe Luke can be her friend, whatever. But because that was not established in episode 7, because Rey didn't have any story arc, you can't really change the original hero journey theme if you don't establish it from episode 7. And I don't know, didn't they notice that? I mean, it just doesn't feel, again, it doesn't feel authentic. It has no depth because it was not established from episode 7.
Well, there are a bunch of different inflections of the hero's journey. Like we talked about before, there's the slaying of the dragon, there's the going to the father and unmasking your parents, and there's a bunch of different ways that it could go. There's the romantic winning of the bride, and there's a bunch of different versions of the hero's journey, but you got to have some kind of a journey. You got to be going something or doing something or establishing something. Something's got to be happening. There's got to be, like you're saying, some kind of growth, some kind of a journey that the person is going on where they don't have something to where they learn about something and they get something and they integrate something back into their life. And we're still trying to figure out exactly what that is. And it kind of feels like the people who are writing these movies are still trying to figure out what that is, because they're working backwards from PC, well, let's put a girl in there, let's put a black guy in there, let's put an Asian in there, and we'll figure out later how to make it into a story that means something.
Yeah, I think they should do exactly the opposite. They should study all the mythological themes and see, okay, so let's start from some basic sort of archetypal structures of how should we make these characters develop. And after you have these mythological blueprints that make sense, of course, then you put in the characters. Not just make characters and then just go at it. Let's just see where it goes, right? And you can see that because it has no depth, obviously. And I don't know how those guys in the Integral Evolver just didn't see that. It's just mind-boggling to me. I don't know. It's weird.
Yeah, man, I feel like that about, a lot of that stuff. I'm just like, where are the distinctions here? It's just so freshman.
Okay, so let's not go too far. So again, Snoke was an incredibly wasteful character. So much potential. Could be Dark Plagueis. Could be, I don't care, even Mace Windu. Something. He was nothing. I'm sure that it's supposed to be more explained in some kind of a Star Wars novel, but again, I don't give a shit about the stupid novels. I want to see depth in the fucking movie, not some stupid novel giving me, well, Snoke was that and that. I don't care. I want to see it in the movie, right? So again, those stupid novels and extended stuff Disney's gonna put out to justify whatever Rian Johnson did is just stupid. That's not movie making. But let's go to the next character. And this character for me is a Jar Jar of the prequels, and that's Rose. But not in a goofy kind of way, but just in a weird, stupid, romantic, dummy. This character is so mind-bogglingly stupid. And again, like I said, with Leia, I have that stupid Mary Poppins scene. And with Rose, I have that stupid theme when they were in the end on the crate, when she said to Finn, I saved you, dummy. That's how we're gonna win. Not fighting for what we hate, saving what we love. While her people are being destroyed by the First Order. So even whatever is being said in front of Finn, in the background they're being destroyed. So it almost feels like she is idiotically stupid for saying that while her fucking family is being destroyed in the meantime. It's like, didn't Rian Johnson, didn't people in Disney see that and like almost started laughing at how stupid Rose is? How did you interpret that?
Yeah, man, it's almost like it's that like short-sighted idea of love. It's like, don't die. It's like, but yeah, he would have saved all those people's lives. Sometimes you gotta sacrifice for something bigger or higher than just yourself. That's part of the hero's journey, is to sacrifice yourself. That idea of like, let's all feel good in the meantime and really not seeing the big picture implications for what's going on. It really does. It makes not only Rose, but I think the rebel forces in general just look kind of like short-sighted and childish. Like, what are you doing? What's your actual plan? I look at them and I go, and what are you going to do? Like, are you even fit to go up against this giant monolith of this army and they're like giant planet destroying spaceships and stuff. What are you doing? Going back to Rose, I mean, she definitely feels just inserted in there. Like, let's get another woman in here. Let's make her Asian.
Exactly.
And
Diversity.
yeah, it's the diversity hire. I don't know. It's like, again, it almost feels like it might be some kind of romantic thing, but because they're just diversity hires and put in there, it's like all they ever do is just hug and we're all just friends. There's no real romantic story in any of this. So it almost feels like a story with no heart, just like a bunch of people kind of wandering aimlessly without any real connection to each other. They just happen to wind up in the same circumstance.
And a lot of reviewers, when you look at the story arc of the Rose and Finn, right? So basically all when they went to that Canto Bay, the casino planet, so everything was for nothing because Holdo already had a plan, right? So all the mutiny and all that shit Poe and Rose and Finn were trying to do in terms of story was basically useless. So basically, because Holdo didn't tell Poe about her plan, Finn and Rose almost fucking died because of that. And even again, this whole plotline could just be edited out of the movie and it wouldn't do anything at all because again, Rose doesn't grow. She's just some idiotic character with some idealistic lover girl who doesn't see how reality is. And Finn again has no character arc. They just have this stupid idea of trying to destroy their tractor beam.
It's just more like capitalism is bad and, oh, by the way, Benicio del Toro.
And we're going to, we have 2 more characters or 3. We're going to come to that one as well. So again, their whole story arc, Finn and Rose, just stupid. Rose is again stupid character, shoehorned in. You could do so much more with Finn. Maybe some people had the idea of deepening the relationship between Finn and Poe. Maybe they should be in a battle together and stuff like that. Obviously, some people even said that they might be gay characters, so they would fall in love. But I think that's probably...
That'd be great.
That would be definitely interesting.
Any kind of love story would be so helpful to this.
Yeah, but none of that we saw. So again, I think that quote... I saved you, dummy. That's how we're gonna win. Not finding what we hate, but saving what we love is even cheesier and more stupid than that stupid quote Anakin, I don't like sand, when he gave that romantic speech to Padme.
I don't like sand. It's coarse and rough and irritating, and it gets everywhere.
I think that was even more stupider than I don't like sand. It gets anywhere, everywhere, blah blah blah. No?
Yeah, man, that's some like postmodern philosophy. Like, let's pay lip service to love and not really sacrifice anything. Like, that's like the main integral, probably one of the main criticisms that we would have for a lot of postmodernists is they pay a lot of lip service to love and feelings and all that stuff, but they won't make the hard discriminations or do the hard work to actually do anything for the things that they say that they love.
And that scene is particularly funnier just because, when I said before, the rebels were being destroyed in the background, right? So she did nothing except endanger them. Thank God, of course, Luke Skywalker came. But if Luke didn't come, they would just fucking die.
They're still going to die. They're both going to die now, and nothing's even going to be
exactly.
achieved from it.
If Luke Skywalker didn't come, quote unquote come, because he didn't really come for whatever, they would all die. So that even portrays her even more as a stupid character that just lost contact with reality. And I don't know how people...
It's a stupid philosophy. That line, and also the line of the past needs to die, and if it won't die, let's kill it. In Integral, we talk about transcend and include. We don't deconstruct, transcend, and negate, and like demonize previous stages to us. And that's what you're seeing done here to the masculine figures, and that's what the portrayal of all these systems and all of the males in these characters as bumbling idiots or people after power or just power crazy morons or emasculated people who are afraid of their power. And only girl power is healthy in this universe.
Exactly. And I'm not this idea of past needs to die, that's a good arc if you portray it in a way that, let's say Kylo Ren has like these deep emotional issues, like sadness and anger because of his parents left him or whatever. And let's say he created this philosophy of, okay, past needs to die. So he's like almost like forcefully trying to forget the past. But you can make it in a way that he's basically trying to submerge his deep anger issues and so on in a forceful way. But that, as a character arc, those submerged things can come up in unhealthy kind of way. And that could be his character arc. So we could do a little psychoanalytic here.
Right. That's a great point, man. So yeah, to some extent, he could start to get over it and like see a new way, and then hopefully eventually even go back and reintegrate some of that kind of stuff.
Yeah, exactly. Maybe he tried to submerge, becomes a good person, but because he didn't integrate them in a healthy way, at some point they make him back evil or something like that, right? I mean, so many opportunities with these shadow issues and so on. But again, that was, even if Johnson tried to do that, again, that was not shot. That was not the theme of the Star Wars movie. So again, we can find those interpretations, but...
It doesn't even feel like they know about some of these kinds of interpretations that we're talking about. And the same way that we're talking about paying lip service to love and all this stuff without really doing any of the things. It's like they want to play archetypes, but they don't have any idea about the consequences of the kinds of stories that they're making or the kind of pictures that they're painting and the kind of implications that creating archetypes in that way actually implies.
I don't know how Rian Johnson is educated on this, but based on what I see, he just, I don't know, maybe he doesn't understand that. It's weird, it's baffling to me. Because these are just some basic story arc, character developments that all directors, I assume, would probably need to know. And it's baffling that Rian Johnson doesn't get them. It's weird. Okay, but let's go on to the next character, which was incredibly really praised, but I think she was more there just for selling toys, and that's Captain Phasma, which I think, again, a great character. I like her design. I like her idea of this like dark side female character who obeys orders. But again, there's no depth. She's just there as a prop, although she could have like major impact on the story. Maybe she could kill Rose. That would be a good idea. I was thinking maybe Captain Phasma should kill Rose and that would make Finn mad and something like that. Nothing. She's just there and she fucking dies in 3 minutes and that's it. How do you see Captain Phasma? That's that Chrome Dome stormtrooper.
Yeah, it just feels like, oh, let's make a girl stormtrooper. Let's get a strong female figure in there, and that'll be more diversity. Who's good? Who's really famous? Who's like on the A or B list? Oh, she was good in this. Let's get her. That'll be great. We'll put her on the poster. It's that kind of stuff. It's not about story. It's about making it look diverse.
Exactly, yeah. And I love Phasma. I like her design. And I even love her character, but there's no depth to it. I mean, couldn't they create like such situation when we know why Phasma is like this, why is she part of the First Order, maybe when she was a child, and obviously you don't have to tell that, but you just need to imply it or show it, right? Maybe she was let go by her parents or something, and maybe her and Rey could have some similarities or whatever. Again, nothing was done. She was just there as a prop for selling stupid fucking toys, and as a character, she just dies, and there's no depth to it, even though I like her design and the idea.
Yeah, I mean, again, you're right. You know, it's like it's not a problem that she's there. We like her. We're not saying. I hate the idea that someone would be like, "Oh, these are just white guys that are upset that that there's diversity in women." No, not at all. Like I love diversity in women, but when it feels hollow, when it feels like you're just putting them in there to have diversity in women, and doesn't even serve the story, then it's not helpful. If you're going to put these people in there, you want to make them real people, not just, oh, well, we got our Asian, check. If anything, that's racist. Feels like you're doing the obligatory thing instead of just portraying people honestly.
Yeah.
Again, it feels more like lip service than authenticity.
And then we have the next character, and that's DJ. Now, I don't know exactly what DJ is supposed to represent, so he's like this smuggler or whatever, and he just happens to be just conveniently at the same prison that Finn and Rose were. Yeah, that's, again, lazy storytelling. But is he supposed to be like some kind of Lando / Han Solo replacement? I don't know exactly. Is he in just because Benicio del Toro is a very popular character? I mean, very popular actor? Because he's just shoehorned in for no reason. I mean, he has like 10 minutes screen time.
I think he was supposed to be put in before into like a previous one or something like that, but then his story got cut. And so he's probably just being like, hey, another Star Wars. I want to be in Star Wars. Get me in Star Wars. And they're like, well, we'll get you in. Don't worry, bud. It'll look great on the poster. So
exactly. And again, it's just like Rose, he's just like shoehorned. Okay, so we need another Mexican guy, right? And I don't know, he's just there for no reason. Sure, he helps them and then he betrays them, but why wouldn't the First Order just kill him? Why would they give him money and let him live? I mean, a lot of things don't make a lot of sense, and I don't want to really get stuck too much. He's just a plain character who's there for plot's sake, and that's it. That's how I see him, unfortunately.
Yeah, man, I really like Benicio del Toro too, so...
I think he's an amazing actor, yeah, but again, it's not his fault, obviously.
Yeah, you're right. He plays no kind of interesting part in the story. He's just there and he's gone. It's like, okay. And I mean, that, like you said, that whole scene just feels like it doesn't really add anything. It could all be cut out. It's an interesting another world to go to or something like that, but it really doesn't contribute much to the story.
And then we have the last character, and that's Chewbacca. And Chewbacca is basically just a taxi driver at this point. Yeah, they give him that scene when the pork looks at him sadly because he's eating porks, right? But so basically he's a vegan sort of agenda thing. And I know you're vegan. So how's your interpretation of that Chewie scene? And in general, Chewie is a character in this movie.
Well, I kind of like that. I like that part. I thought it was kind of funny because it's like you could tell Chewbacca, there's a part of him that has a heart, or at least that there's like this kind of little cartoon that's like, oh, don't do that. And he's just kind of like the regular meat eater. He's just like, don't make me think about it. He'll be the next one.
But as a character in general, how you felt? I mean, he didn't have any arc. He was just, like I said, he's just basically a taxi driver.
He's just put in there to make it seem Star Warsy. He's, you know,
Yeah.
throw Chewie in there. We still got that costume.
I was thinking that Chewie should maybe have a battle with Phasma or something. Maybe something like that. They could put those two characters in conflict, or whatever, doesn't matter.
It'd be cool to see Chewie do some stuff.
Yeah,
I mean,
he
really,
did a bit in
it
Force
seems
Awakens,
like
so.
we're just begging and pleading for any type of story with character development.
Yeah, and we're doing that with every character, basically. We are numbering all these characters, we're talking about them, and all we are begging is give us some kind of depth, give us some kind of arc, and because none of them have any arcs, and it's so frustrating, so frustrating.
Yeah, it's a very shallow Star Wars.
So let's go to the meat of the movie. So first off, I had to really think about what is actually the main plot twist of this movie. Where's this sort of arc? Okay, this is where things are gonna change. And from what I could gather, in terms of what the main plot twist was, that when Kylo killed Snoke, and we thought, okay, Rey and Kylo are gonna like join forces or something, but then Kylo said, no, let the past die. So I assumed that was where Ryan was hinting this is the main plot twist. But because Snoke was not developed, and because Snoke was killed, I was so surprised by Snoke being killed that plot twist, oh my god, Kylo Ren's still gonna stay evil after all that, just didn't, because of bad character development and because of killing Snoke too prematurely, and we don't know anything about him, it didn't feel like the main plot twist, it just felt like, oh, whatever. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and imagine what it would have been like if Rey would have been able to claim her healthy masculine power in that moment and been like, yes, I will help you change the system. And if she actually could step up into that role instead of just fighting against it, if she could be like, yes, I will help you and we will do things better and we will rule with power and do a lot to make the big galaxy a better place and we will let the past die and bring this tyranny to an end. But the idea seems to be that any type of stepping up into power at all is toxic or will lead to the dark side. Power leads to the dark side. Assertiveness is evil, is the idea that seems to be here. It seems contradictory too, because they do wind up fighting a lot, but it's usually fighting against more than it seems to be fighting for anything. It's all self-defense, no assertiveness.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, there's no decisions are made based on bigger overarching picture. I mean, even if Rey really was smart, even she could just pretend to be on his side and then maybe kill him when he's not expecting. So let's do this together. And it would be better for her to become sort of a spy and then kill him when he's not expected. Not just saying, no, fuck you, Kylo, I'm still on the light side, I'm going back to Rebels. You know what I mean?
Or like working with him from the inside to be like, well, no, that's the old way. We're not doing it like that anymore. We're going to squash the beef or however you want to say it. They could have arguments about how the order is going to go instead of just this idea that any type of masculine ideas about order are unhealthy.
Yeah, exactly. Her response was just in the moment. She didn't really think these things through because she could actually save the Republic if she did join him and then maybe try to, from maybe in episode 9, from some psychological manipulations, try to find good in him because she actually believed that there is good in him, right? But she just sort of gave up and fuck you.
Yeah,
then.
She gave up on him, if anything.
Yeah, exactly.
He betrayed his master for her, and she didn't step up and fulfill her side of it. She didn't meet him halfway. If anything, you could make an argument that he is the hero of this thing and that she's the villain.
Maybe, that's what I was thinking, because maybe Rian Johnson, in some subtle way, is trying to tell us why postmodernism and all this SJW agenda is actually toxic, because all the decisions female made basically almost destroyed the Republic, or the rebellion, whatever they called. So all the decisions female characters made are stupid. Phasma dies. Holdo basically almost destroys the Republic. Rey doesn't make any smart decisions. So maybe he is subtly trying to say that feminist ignorance of male toxicity is gonna kill us.
Luke Skywalker kills himself and dissolves into nothingness and gives up, right?
Yeah, yeah, exactly. So maybe Rian Johnson is smarter than we think.
But again, I think this kind of stuff actually says something about their psychology and their philosophy and their worldview. I think this is like us being able to be like, look at how this is problematic, see how it fails from a meta-analysis, from like a symbolic interpretive perspective. But in the same way that if you were talking to somebody about morality or something like that, and they were giving you all these kinds of metaphors, you could be like, well, let's look at that metaphor and let's see if it would actually work. See how that's stupid and it would actually kill you. Like, see how if we applied that standard across the board, it fails. We see that, but I think they are putting it forward like this is the good way to do things. And I think it says something about their limited perspective and their limited worldview. I don't think he's making that kind of a commentary. I think we're making that kind of a commentary, I guess is what I'm saying.
Yeah, I will give him credit that he's a genius if that was what he was actually subtly trying to imply. I don't think, like you said, that was the case. And even if he did that, you could do that, and I would give him
That would be
credit.
great if
You
he pushed it that
you
way.
have balls, man, and I think that would actually be a great idea for this Star Wars movie in particular to actually use their this postmodernistic superficiality and make it seem like. Although I have even better blame how you would do that, but that would be great if he did that. That would be incredibly deep. But again, I don't think, like you said, that was intentional. I think everything we're just cherry picking here is not intentional.
If there's not some
Yeah.
kind of a synthesis at the end of this next movie, there will be no resolution. There's no resolution. I mean, there's been no story so far. So I mean, to imagine that there will be no resolution is not that hard. It's not that hard to imagine. But this will not be an effective movie if it doesn't try to create some kind of a synthesis. If it doesn't have either Rey step up into power, or if it doesn't have Kylo Ren come to the light side.
Or both.
Or both. Both would be even better. I mean, at that moment, like we already said, that would have been a great opportunity for synthesis right there. You could have had it, and we could have been seeing how that plays out in action in the next one. That would have been like so interesting. But instead, they want to demonize power.
It's gonna be interesting to see where JJ is gonna take this, because again, because there's nothing happened in two movies, there's actually still potential, and that's probably one good thing, because nothing happened. You still have potential to make at least some kind of coherent point in the episode 9. So let's see how JJ can fix this pile of garbage. We'll see. It's gonna be interesting. I'm actually, because these two movies were so bad, especially episode 8, I'm actually wondering, just as a thought process, okay, how can JJ, even if I put myself in the JJ's shoes, okay, how would I as a filmmaker, storyteller, fix this mishmashing and no character arcs and everything? How can I make this work? And that's what actually makes me more excited for episode 9 than the characters or whatever. It's just, how is this guy gonna save this shit? This is the exciting part, which is kind of sad, but it's kind of intriguing in a way.
That's the great thing about watching movies, and I almost want to say even especially bad movies, is because it's interesting to see how things go bad and how they go wrong. And that can almost be as entertaining and interesting as watching a movie that's awesome.
Yeah, exactly, yeah.
There's so many levels to making a movie, and we've talked about some of them. There's the story, there's particular actors, there's the music, there's the cinematography, there's the locations you go to. I mean,
The sound design.
yeah, I mean, there's so many different factors to it that if you just go, oh, that movie is dumb or that movie is stupid, that's not really a good criticism. It's like, what about the movie? What didn't you like? What did you think worked? What don't you think worked? And I do think a lot of the things in this Star Wars are better. Like, I'm glad to see a lot more like real looking people and environments and real sword fights that don't seem all CG and stuff. Some of that stuff is looking a lot more raw and real. And if they could only bring their story and make it more raw and real and less fantastical, they would actually probably have something a lot more human.
Okay, so now that we got all that throughout the way, let's go on the plot holes. Now, there are many plot holes. We're not going to talk about all of them. I'll just name some of them. And there, for anybody who's listening, there's a lot of detailed explanations on YouTube. But here are just some. For instance, the first one, why was the idea in episode 7, the Republic's supposed to be stronger than the Empire, but now it's the other way around. Empire is back stronger, so that's sort of thrown out the window. Why didn't the First Order just hyperspace in front of the Rebels fleet and just destroy them like that? I mean, that would be an easy fix. Are they stupid? Why didn't the Resistant bombers use hyperspace to destroy Snoke's ship if Holdo was able to do that with her ship? Why Holdo didn't tell about Poe's plan? Because again, if she did, Finn and Rose didn't really have a story arc. So did she didn't tell Poe just so they could have a story arc, which is just stupid? Why are the plans hidden in R2-D2 if Luke Skywalker didn't want to be found? Why wouldn't just Luke Skywalker destroy the plans? Again, doesn't make any sense. Again, J.J. Abrams and Rian Johnson didn't really talk about it. Why Snoke couldn't feel Kylo's intent? Doesn't make any sense. How did Rey learn to fight? There was no training. That was already plot hole in the episode 7. And this is one I want to talk about, which is the last confrontation with Luke Skywalker and Kylo Ren, and see your take on it. So the first problem is, because Rose and Finn didn't save that weapon they had, Luke Skywalker had to come out. But the plot twist is, it wasn't really Luke Skywalker, it was his projection. Which again doesn't make any sense, because if you want to kill a character, at least kill him in a blaze of glory, and just, if he would die anyway, why wouldn't he just die in flesh, right? But so he came here. He came in front of the First Order's fleet, and then they tried to shoot him. Nothing happened, and then Kylo came down and tried to engage him. But the problem is he used the blue lightsaber. But the blue lightsaber was actually destroyed when Rey and Kylo, before the Holdo destroyed Snoke's ship, they tore the blue lightsaber apart. So even if Kylo couldn't feel Luke Skywalker was actually using the Force astral projection, he could see the blue lightsaber, but that lightsaber was destroyed. So wouldn't that make him think, maybe that's not really Luke, maybe that's just the Force? That's a huge plot hole. But maybe the plot hole is not such a big problem. How do you feel like the idea that Luke was actually using the Force astral projection? And
when have we ever seen that before?
well, actually on Twitter, Ryan Johnson, there's actually a Star Wars book, Wheel of the Force or something, and that ability actually is explained in it, right? But again, like we talk about the Force lightning that Yoda used, Force is also a character, and you need to build up that ability. So at some point in episode 7 or at the beginning of episode 8, that ability needs to be introduced.
Yeah.
And then after that, you can sort of use this idea of astral projection. You cannot just shoehorn it in, because all it did is make, not only was Luke Skywalker already a pussy and a grumpy old man, but now he's even a bigger pussy because he didn't even show in the fucking flesh. And they even hinted...
Right, exactly.
They even hinted that he could do that because his X-Wing was actually submerged in water. So
right. He could have gone there.
Yeah, exactly. And again, just makes him look even weaker.
It's again this like the same thing earlier we were talking about with Rey, where she has the chance to step up, but she doesn't really step up. That she steps up in a passive way that, like, he could go there and he could use his freaking Force powers and knock all of those
like dominoes, right?
Down like dominoes, and he could choke out this little emo prick and like be done with it right then and there, and like and that's what I'm saying. It's like a lot of this virtue signaling instead of actually having the courage and the guts to put your freaking money where your mouth is. You know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly.
Like, to me, that's like the big plot hole in this whole thing. Once you start going so crazy on the magic Force powers, is like, here's a plot hole. Why doesn't Snoke just use his awesome Force powers to crush those ships in space and everyone in them? It seems like that would be within his ability, the way that he throws people around. Once you make the Force so freaking crazy powerful like that, it's almost like, why, you have to ask like those things, like, why didn't Luke show up and actually do something about this? How is he going to just let these people die? How is he going to abandon all these people and go be a crybaby because nothing's perfect or something, and sometimes things go bad or whatever? Like,
I mean, if you want to go all the way with it, this is how he should have done. Let's say Luke comes to the battlefield, but he comes on the Flash. Kylo kills him, and then Yoda shows up and just strikes lightning on Kylo Ren, and Kylo dies. And it's over, right? I mean, why not at this point? If you're going to go all the way, and like you said, if Force doesn't have any meaning, people can just have magic powers out of nowhere. Why didn't Yoda show up and just zap Kylo from the sky, right? It's just stupid.
Right, it's like they have all these powers, but they're not using them in any kind of reasonable or logical kind of way. It's all just only to the extent to where they could show off or something. I don't know. If you actually had a person who is this kind of powerful, you don't think they would just be wandering through the world like, what's going on? You think that they would actually be like, no, I got some power, I'm going to do something about it. But power and authority are heavily rejected in this. That's why as soon as he steps up, it's like just as a distraction, so that way these people can get away, so that way they can fight again another day. It's like, well, there's no plan here. There's no idea of really stepping up to actually defeat the person. It's like this weird like Batman kind of universe or something, where the Batman's got like an ethic where it's like, I'll never kill the Joker, yet he'll like let him get away over and over again, where he had tons of opportunities to kill him. But at a certain point, that kind of thing is irresponsible, right? It feels like, okay, look, Batman, next time you catch this Joker guy, maybe the utilitarian ethic thing versus the Kantian ethic thing is to kill this man, because he's not going to recover. He's not going to come to the light side. Like, we could set a lot of people free and save a lot of people right now if we just did the dirty work and got this thing done. But that's the dark side, you know? It's like, come on. It's like Kantian ethics. Like, if it's bad to do, it's always bad to do, without any kind of consideration for context or the amount of suffering that's caused or whatever.
Yeah, and no big picture viewing, right?
Yeah.
You can have something that's bad on the surface, right? But when you look at the big picture, you can see, oh, actually it was good, right? None of that, just whatever's happening right now. Nobody gives a shit about the past, the future, the overarching arc, nothing. Just whatever's happening is happening.
Right, because the Force is going to take care of it. It'll just plop you into the right position, and you'll automatically have powers to be able to deal with it. It's like, that's what I'm saying. Like the people in this universe, they don't take responsibility for their life. They don't take creative control of a situation. They don't stand up for what's good. They don't have any of the positive masculine figures or attributes. They're cut off from it. And this kind of wussy throwing a fit and only fighting for yourself or for the moment kind of a thing.
It's horrible. And then in the end, when they escape and then Rey comes and just leaves those rocks like it's nothing. Again, she had no training and she can just like lift a few tons of rocks. Do you remember that scene?
Yeah.
And then they go into Millennium Falcon. Where did that come from? Again.
And if she's got that kind of power, why doesn't she go and...
I mean, why doesn't she just take those stupid rocks and just throw them at Kylo Ren and he's gonna die? I mean, so weird. Again, there's no sort of realistic ground rules of how the Force works.
Yeah, or even how reality works in this thing. It's like...
Yeah, and you can just use the Force powers that Rey has and Yoda has and just break the plot because he can, like I said, why doesn't just Ghost Yoda come and destroy the First Order and zap them with lightning? Simple as that, right? Because it's established this is now possible, yeah. And so it breaks again. And it doesn't make sense. You gotta have...
Yeah, I mean, why doesn't Yoda care? Why doesn't he care enough to go do that? He's going to strike lightning to the Jedi Temple and watch the text burn and laugh when he could go and strike lightning on some of those ships, or you've got Kylo Ren, and actually make a difference with those kinds of powers? No, he's just passive. Let things happen. Don't stand up for anything good. Just go with the flow. It's bad philosophy.
And when you don't have those ground rules, there's no tension because everything is like wishy-washy. It's more like anything can go, anything goes, and if anything goes, there's no tension because, again, it's opening. The Force is opening too much plot points, and you cannot have such a power because this basically destroys the Star Wars lore in a way, and that's in a way that's what it did.
Turns people into props, and then it's all inauthentic.
Okay, so I think we went through all the main things. We look at some plot points, we look at the character arcs, which they were no character arcs or whatever. And now let's talk about maybe fixing Star Wars. I'll give you sort of my basic idea of how I was thinking about it, and then you can give me yours. So this is what I would have gone. So my idea was that at the end of episode 7, when Rey comes, Luke Skywalker would choke her. It was almost like implying that Luke Skywalker was a dark side user now. And then the episode would end. But basically my idea was I would like use this kind of Christian mythology. Christians are known for like denying their sort of subtle body, their sexual energy kind of thing.
Yeah.
So the idea is when Luke came to the planet, when he looked at the original Jedi text, the original Jedi text actually said that you need to embrace both sides. So I would actually make some kind of a plot hole as to why the Jedis in the prequels only embrace the light side and not the darks. So once the Luke Skywalker saw the original interpretation, this is where he realized that the real Jedi is about integrating both at the same time and not just the light side, right?
Oh man, that would be awesome.
Exactly. So it would be like a Christian sort of thing, like when you have the Bible, like, let's deny our sexuality. In this case, it would be like deny our power, deny our dark energy, right? And he would teach Rey in such a way when he would say, hey, you gotta embrace the dark side. But he would also be like afraid for her that maybe she's gonna turn to the dark side. So he would try, and you can have all sorts of dynamics around that. And then you can see like how he teaches her to be a real Jedi and embracing both sides. Yes. And maybe she teaches him something. And then we would see how, for instance, Snoke teaches Kylo Ren, and then we could have some kind of confrontation. But basically my idea was that overarching idea of the story and how would I see the trilogy is how we can use the character Rey and maybe even Kylo Ren to see that it's about integrating. And that would be the integral idea that I assume Daily War Evolver was trying to hint at. How can we use both energies in a healthy way so we can get things done? And I think that would be sort of my overarching idea, how to embrace both sides, and what makes a real Jedi is not light, and a real Sith just dark, but embracing both and becoming like this holistic, integral kind of person. That would be sort of my main sort of philosophy behind it. So what's your idea?
That's totally it, man. And you're definitely talking about it, especially it sounds like on a personal level, that we need to do that as individuals, but also you can apply it at the cultural level too, where it can't just be this rebellious force and this tyrannical force, that there needs to be some kind of a synthesis, there needs to be some kind of a healthy order a healthy father, a healthy system, responsibility, and natural hierarchy with training, spreading gifts and opportunities, and bringing back online things like the Jedi teaching school and having those kind of healthy structures in place for development, to bring some of those things that tyranny crushed back online and to do it right. And to, I mean, like some of that stuff in the prequels or whatever, you're like, all right, this is awesome. This is beautiful. To go from that to this Last Jedi where you have whiny Luke up on a mountaintop and the burning of the last books. Ugh, that's terrible. And now they're just giving it away for free. You don't even need to do the work anymore. It's just like, it's a crazy dichotomy. But if we could get back to that, something like a healthy masculine hierarchy and good healthy standards that don't try to crush humanity, but try to serve humanity and lift humanity up, as well as what you're talking about. I think if we could work on a love story between Rey and Kylo Ren, and they could learn from each other, and she could save him from the dark side and teach him about love and care and bring him into friendship and relationship and all that kind of stuff and help him heal his heart. And if he could teach her about the importance of order and the positive sides of power and what they could do with it if they actually included care in the mix, find that healthy synthesis between vulnerability, the heart space, and control, the masculine, on both scales, the personal and the cultural. Any kind of move in that direction would be great, and that would feel like we were getting somewhere and that we had some kind of payoff or some kind of coming to a conclusion that feels like we've learned something. If we don't get that, I don't know where it goes from here. It's just these empty props playing lightsabers and doing force magic. So that would be super depressing. But I do think these symbols are rich. This mythology is rich, and there's a lot of treasure to be had in there if you can align the symbols in the right way. If they keep on just doing what they're doing, they're going to piss a lot of people off. It's not even totally conscious why it makes them so angry. To some people it is more than others, but it is insulting to the struggle that we all go through when you make these inauthentic characters who aren't real and then expect us to care about them.
Exactly. I mean, again, there's so many opportunities here that are just missed. And again, I feel like they could have done so much more, not just in terms of giving people a message to integrate both sides and not just have one agenda and not another agenda, or just say this is totally 100% evil and this is totally 100% good. But like you said, try to find some synthesis between what is good and bad in both parts, right? And those texts, like you could almost look at those texts as Bibles. And I think those texts, those Jedi texts that Luke Skywalker found, could be one of the main characters in a way. Because again, they tell you that the Jedi is not just about the light side. And for some reason, like maybe like Christian mystics would misinterpret the Bible when it comes to, let's say, sexuality. The Jedi Knights in the prequels, in a way, actually did misinterpret what the original text says. And because of that, because they denied the dark side within themselves, they could not see Darth Sidious as being a bad person.
Yeah, that's what originally created the split, was too hard of a binary.
Exactly. And Luke Skywalker actually realized the reason why the Jedi couldn't see that's Darth Sidious or Palpatine at that time was evil, because they're suppressed that dark side within themselves.
Right. And they created that shadow by denying it.
Exactly. And when Luke Skywalker sort of saw this realization, when he read the original scripts, and when he saw how Jedis misinterpret those scripts, that could make him, let's say, a bit more shocked and grumpy, because he realized, oh my God, the Jedis misinterpret the text for whatever reason was wrong all along. And that could make him like almost give up on the Jedi, because they were so naive and they didn't see how original text work. But then Rey came, and let's say he is a grumpy old man, but then Rey sort of came and maybe even inspired Luke Skywalker to become a Jedi and something like that. I mean, there are many ways you can go to, but I think those scripts could be like similar to the Bible and the sort of denying of the gross body, as you said in one of your videos, which is like sexuality and all those primal instincts, or the denying of the lower chakras. And basically Luke could teach her, or maybe Rey could teach him to sort of embrace all the chakras or whatever. I think those scripts and those Jedi texts would be incredible plot point for those things, and not just destroy them and throw them out the window and say, well, we all have it in us.
I mean, at this flip point, maybe we could even magically bring them back. Maybe we find out that they didn't burn or something.
Well, actually, no, there actually is a movie. I mean, at the end of the day, actually Rey took those texts. I don't know if you remember that, but actually there was a scene when those texts were in the Millennium Falcon, because she opened a drawer or something and those texts were inside.
Okay.
Yeah,
Well,
I
that's
don't
good
remember
that
that
she's got
scene,
the text.
but she probably got some of them. So maybe they could still. I mean, the problem is why does she have them at this point, right? But maybe they can still sort of go into that way, and maybe she can sort of realize that Jedi went wrong when they were trying to be too light, or maybe the Rey. I mean, let's try to save Episode 9 now. Let's say if that's true, if she has the text, maybe Rey could read them and see, okay, I need to embrace both sides, and maybe by her developing both light and the dark, maybe that way she can defeat Kylo Ren or show him the way, because Kylo obviously is denying the light side, and Rey is, I don't know what exactly, she's probably light, but she's denying the dark side, whatever. And maybe through those texts she can become a more integrative Jedi, and with that integration help Kylo Ren or something. Maybe that's sort of the way they should go. I don't know, that's sort of my idea of how maybe fix Episode 9.
Yeah. I mean, I would definitely love to see her have some kind of romantic thing with him and save him, and they synthesize together. That'd be great.
I think that actually the problem is because there's no romance established till now, I think it would just feel too cheesy. And at this point, why would she be in love with this main kind of child? I mean, the problem is it's not going to be like the passionate love that Han Solo and Leia had, right? So Han Solo was like this bad boy smuggler, and Leia was this kind of bitchy princess, but they had that sexual tension. But I feel like here, because Kylo Ren is just this man-child, I feel like it would be like pitiful kind of sexuality. They wouldn't have that sexual polarity, you know what I mean? So I don't know how Love Story at this point would really be.
He would have to have some scenes of redemption or something like that before he would have to do some stuff that was like she would be like, oh, okay, you're a good man or something like that. She would have to have some kind of moments like that with him where she was like starting to get attracted to him or see integrity in him or see him making steps in a more healthy version of masculinity. That's why I think romance is important to this thing, is because, like you're saying, without the romantic elements, it's really easy to paint guys as just a bunch of bumbling idiots or like overly testosterone-driven meatheads or something like that. That's why you need the romance, because if you want to see a healthy masculine figure doing his thing with integrity, then that's sexy. That's what sexy is. For a female to see in a man, she wants to see a man of integrity.
Yeah, and she
wants to see a man that she can respect, which is not some clown or some bumbling idiot or some person who isn't able to really step up and own their power. And so that's why there needs to be some kind of romantic thing in these movies. Otherwise, I feel like we're just going to keep getting these bumbling idiot or sad, pathetic losers as men.
And I think, I mean, when it comes to romance, obviously we're not just talking about romance, but we're also talking about sex. And I think that the idea of, even when it comes to sex, that's something that David Data basically talks about, is this idea that the reason why sex is so sterile, when you have people in monogamous relationships, the problems why sex is so boring is because they are not embracing that dark side of the sex. Right, so you have this safe kind of, so this new agey postmodern people, at least that's sort of what David Data is saying, is they have this safe light side kind of sex. But because if you just have this safe light side sex with no kind of that deep, darker, masculine kind of power within it, when like a man really tries to take a woman in a more kind of forceful but still loving way. So again, synthesis between, not of course rape. Basically, David Data sort of says it's not rape, it's ravishment. So it's like, yeah, it's ravishment. He calls it ravishment.
But like a woman definitely wants to be like, if she loves you, if she trusts you, if she's established that with you, she wants you to like be almost driven mad in pursuit of her. She wants you to grab her up and you know, she wants to be like needed and wanted in that kind of passionate way.
Exactly.
Yeah. So I mean, yeah, that's what I think what we're talking about here is.
I mean, it could be an interesting sort of idea. Can Rey sort of use her, you know, light side femininity to sort of maybe awaken this present man, and maybe through sexuality, Kylo Ren can find light within himself or something like that.
I would be real surprised if they went there. I think that part of what they're doing with their feminist agenda is they almost want to desexualize Rey. They don't want her to use her traditional feminine powers. They want her to be able to kick ass in a man's world without needing a man. Women are badass. They're amazing people.
Of course.
It's not to say that they can't do that, but they should also be able to express their femininity in a way that's healthy too. It's not that I'm saying that women should stick to their role or anything like that. I'm saying that we both need to be able to be in touch with our vulnerability and our strength. It's great that she's got her strength, but she's also got her femininity and her beauty and her vulnerability. And part of being balanced is being able to use that too.
And the problem with sexlessness, also prequels had that problem, right? So Anakin was kind of freaky sexual. When he looked at Padme, it was like almost creepy because again, sex was not so much part of the prequels. But here is also creepy because again, none of these, they're all sterilized, right? There's no sex. And if you have no sex, you basically have no fucking humanity. You know what I mean?
It's like no drive for life. What are we all fighting for here? We're all just buddies giving each other hugs. Who's like passionately doing this for the people that they love? Where's the family? Where's the communion? Where's the partnership and the passion?
Exactly. Mostly every movie we watch, we at some point ask ourselves, okay, who's gonna fuck who? And it's like a basic question when you look at any movie, basically. And even in Star Wars, you're like, who's gonna fuck who? Is Rey gonna fuck Finn? Who's gonna, and nothing happens. They're all just sterilized, boring, stereotypical characters with no depth. And obviously, like I said, if you have no sex, sexuality is a big part of our culture. And I feel that the problem in our culture is that sexuality is suppressed. And with this feminist agenda coming into the surface, where's the balance between loving a woman in a maybe more ravishment, loving kind of way, but still masculine, right? And that's why porn is so freaking popular, because porn, you can just go to the, YouPorn and just click. And why we like this aggressive sex, which in porn usually is, right? Is because we don't have this healthy way with our lovers, partners, and so on to express that dark side sexuality. And again, that could be another nice theme.
It's some shadow, man, for sure.
Yeah, and that's why you have
see how just looking at Star Wars, what we're actually talking about are the problems in philosophy and psychology of our current culture, and how that shows up in Star Wars through these different archetypes. It's amazing how what we're really doing is psychoanalyzing the problems with these philosophies, with these stages of development, and the psychology of these people and how the ideas play out in real world, just through looking at how this culture tries to make Star Wars.
I think the movies that we're making, and Lord of Faults, and especially The Last Jedi, I think that's a good sort of psychoanalytic view of how we see man and a woman and sex. And basically we see it by not seeing it, basically.
And power and culture and gender and diversity and it's very revealing about our level of development. And it's clear we're making some progress. We're trying to include diversity, and we're trying to explore what a healthy feminine archetype looks like. We're trying. We really are trying, and we're seeing a lot of the current systems, the problems with them, and we're deconstructing them. That's all good progress. It's just that it's a lot of throwing the baby out with the bathwater, and it leaves all these holes and all these shadow areas that become apparent once they play out through archetypes in stories, how those ideas go wrong. Even when you're trying to paint the archetype in the way that you think is best, that's very telling about what you think is best, and then we get to decide if it actually is good or not.
Exactly. So there are good points. Obviously, inclusion of diversity, everybody has rights and so on. But again, like you said, you're throwing out the baby with the bathwater. So there are actually good things in hierarchy. There are good things in masculine sort of essence, and there are also bad things. But if you just throw the whole masculine out the window and say feminine is where it's at, then you're sort of denying a part of reality.
And you're going from one extreme to the other when really we need to figure out some kind of balance, some kind of synthesis.
Exactly. And you see, ironically, in a way, the whole movie is like this flat character that has issues. So we're actually not so much judging the movie, we're more almost like psychoanalyzing Rian Johnson at this point, right? And
if he's the guy who came up with these ideas,
he wrote it. He did everything.
Influenced by Disney, of course, and that's where you get a lot of these factors coming into play. But it's interesting because when you pick up a mythology like Star Wars, it's got the whole set of archetypes there. So however you place them on the board, it really is like kind of a map of your own psychology projected outward. What you think this archetype look like actually says more about you.
Exactly.
And how you think about that archetype, and are you projecting your shadow onto them, or are you putting them up on a pedestal, or are you thinking about them in unreasonable ways? And to some extent, it's hard to tell exactly where motivations are coming from, and there's multiple motivations. It's not just this is my philosophy, it's this is my philosophy plus this is what's good for marketing and different demographics and this and that. But all those things come together and they tell us a lot about the culture in general, about how we see things and the ways that people have gotten upset and given backlash against this movie. That tells you a lot about a culture as well, the kind of complaints that they make and stuff. This kind of symbol set is like a Rorschach blot for a culture, or like a tarot card reading or something, where you can put all the symbols on the table and they can reveal a lot about human psychology.
Agreed. based on what we said, again, it's said that movie is interesting not because of the movie, but because of the ideas of how Ryan, and maybe Ryan in this case is like a stereotype for some postmodernists, right? How Ryan and people at Disney see humanity, see people, see the masculine, see the feminine roles, and that's what makes it actually more interesting instead of the movie. And again, that's a good thing and a bad thing. And like you said, I think we actually did more psychoanalyzing of our culture than we did criticizing the movie, although we obviously did both, right? And it's going to be interesting to see how where is it going to go? Unfortunately, I'm quite pessimistic. I think it's going to continue going this. I mean, it's a snowball effect at this point, right? So Ryan's just going to do some stereotypical ending. You're going to have the final confrontation, and Rey's going to probably win, and feminism wins, blah, blah, blah. I think that's sort of where I think it's going to go. I don't think it's going to be any kind of integration, but I hope I'm wrong.
I don't know, man. I think that he might hear this and then be like, dang, I should take their advice. And then he'll rewrite the script, and then we'll be the heroes of Star Wars. The true heroes of Star Wars.
I hope so. I hope he will see our podcast. I hope he will look at other people. I mean, there's a guy, I looked at his whole review. He did like a 6-hour review of the whole Last Jedi movie. 6 hours in 3 parts. And he went through every minor plot hole. So people really are passionate. They want to see some depth to it. I think we also, with our criticism, I hope we brought something new to a table, especially with your sort of more mythological interpretation background. I hope people got something new. I think that's pretty much it, man. I think we covered so much. So I think we should probably end it soon.
Yeah, we did. We killed it.
Yeah, I think we killed it.
Not really very many people are talking about it in this mythological way, though, are they?
No, I don't think so. I mean, a lot of them they sort of hint at it, but because they didn't read the Joseph Campbell stuff, they sort of have the gut feeling that a lot of things are removed, but they don't talk about it from this sort of mythological standpoint. But they hint at it.
Do they have suggestions as to how they think that it can be better, or do you hear mostly just criticisms?
No, some people have suggestions as well. They don't have so much like deep mythological, but those suggestions do make sense in terms of mythology. So they definitely have healthy and deeper suggestions. So I think people aren't that stupid. They're doing a great job. But it's more about criticism than actually having new ideas. But there are actually some reviewers who there's a whole YouTube videos on how to fix it, and those ideas are good and a lot more mythologically sound as well. At least they make a sense within the universe. So yeah. Unfortunately, it's a shame that people actually have better idea and better script writing sense than directors do. It's an interesting phenomenon. We basically said everything about the movie, but let's put in a little scores. So we're gonna go from 1 to 5 stars, or half a star to 5 stars. So half a stars is really outrageously bad, 2.5 is like an average, and 5 is the best. So from that scale, what would you give the movie?
Ooh, Star Wars. How many stars will it get? I don't know, man. I think that this movie was really beautiful. It was very well shot. It's a very nice looking movie. It's got good cinematography. There's a lot of good things going on with this in terms of like all movies everywhere, if we're starting to compare like that. But like you're saying, it's got some major issues with plot and with character development. So that definitely hurts the movie. I think I'm going to give it between 2.5 and 2 stars, but I might just go ahead and give it the 2 stars.
Okay, so slightly below average, would you say? You would say?
Yeah, slightly below average.
Yeah, I'm gonna be even harsher than you, and I do agree if we wanna like try to find some good parts, and there were some good moments, I'm not saying that. Obviously, like you said, cinematography was great, the sound effects, the visual effects, and acting was fine for what it was, but when you look at the Star Wars lore and all the rules it breaks, and the pacing, the illogical story arcs and plots, and too many twists for the sake of twists, I mean, the whole thing is just a huge clusterfuck to me, and I'm gonna go even lower and say 1.5 star. For a Star Wars movie, really, really disappointing. I would give like Force Awakens maybe 2.5 or maybe 3.
Yeah, and you would generally expect the Star Wars movies to be getting around 4 or 5 stars as like great movies if done right. So the fact that we're down to like 2 stars or 1.5 stars is pretty bad for Star Wars.
It is, unfortunately, and you know, even the prequels I would give higher grades, but if we compare them to originals, but I would even go even further to say even if prequels and originals didn't exist, let's just say Force Awakens and The Last Jedi existed. Even then, for me, it's not any higher because it still doesn't even make sense within what Force Awakens set up. So like I said, I think Rian Johnson wanted to go his own way. I think he went way too far in some places, even further than Lucas did in The Phantom Menace. Yeah, that's why I justify my 1.5 star.
Yeah. So you're saying it's not even just like a thing where we have really high expectations set and they really let us down, and so we're maybe more critical on it than normal. You're saying that even if it was just a standalone movie and it was just fresh, that you would still be like, this is a fail, this is some bullshit.
In a way, this is actually a standalone movie. I don't even see it necessarily as a continuation to Force Awakens. And maybe if it was just a standalone, I would maybe give it 2.5 or 3 stars. If it was just a standalone. But even then, maybe no, I'll just give it 2.5 as a really averagey, weird kind of sci-fi movie. If we didn't know Star Wars existed before. But we know that it exists. It has its own lore. It has its own characters. And if we put all those things into account, I'm sorry, but I cannot even go further higher than 2 stars.
So you're saying it does have some kind of an effect then? The fact that you know about these other Star Wars movies and it has to exist in the context of those movies does make it a little bit worse.
Well, I mean, for me, it's obviously necessary to put those things into account. I cannot look at it just a standalone movie. And if I did, it's maybe an average, or even that slightly below average. But the fact that it's a Star Wars movie, and then we all had these expectations, and how he broke the role, the basic rules, and not just basic rules in terms of Star Wars lore, but also in terms of how the pacing works. I think it's just basic rules of how to make a movie. Again, I'm just extremely disappointed, so I'm standing at 1.5 star.
I feel you, man.
But anyway, I think we should end it by now. Do you have anything like a last thing to say, or?
No, I think that's it, man. I think we covered it.
So for everybody who's interested in David Long's material, he's an integral philosopher. He's also a rapper and so on. I'm gonna in the end screen and in subscription, people can see your channel and your content if they are interested. So you can shout out. I'll give a shout out to that. Yeah, you can subscribe to his channel. And yeah, that's pretty much it. So David, thank you for having like this almost like a 3-hour talk about Star Wars.
Thank you so much for geeking out with me about Star Wars and mythology.
Yeah,
brother.
it was great.
A lot of fun.
We really put a lot on the table, and I hope it got people thinking. And I hope with criticism that we did, and also people all over the world, that maybe Disney or JJ will listen and try to fix this mess, and maybe episode 8 will get something we actually like.
Listen up, JJ. We need synthesis.
Yeah, and we'll see. So again, thanks David for being part of it, and I'm looking forward for our next talk.
Yeah, thanks, bud. Peace, Aljoša.
Yeah, everybody, peace.
All right, peace, internet people.